Isabella Rowe stood in the marble bathroom of her penthouse prison, staring at two pink lines that would either save her life or end it. Outside the door, her husband, the most dangerous man in the city, waited for an answer she hadn't planned to give. For 2 years, she'd been the perfect mafia wife, silent, elegant, invisible. Tonight, she'd packed her bags to disappear forever. But the baby growing inside her had just rewritten every escape plan, every careful lie, every moment of survival she'd built in a marriage colder than the Milan winter outside her window. Adrian Vale didn't do love. He did control. And now she carried the one thing that could make her irreplaceable or expendable. Before we begin this story of secrets, power, and the thin line between captivity and devotion, if you're drawn to tales where love wars with loyalty and silence speaks louder than words, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's step into Isabella's world, where golden cages are still cages, and freedom comes with a price she never expected to pay. The penthouse smelled like money and loneliness, a combination Isabella Rowe had learned to recognize in the 2 years since she'd become Mrs. Adrian Vale. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, her reflection ghostly against the night sky. 26 floors below, the world moved with purpose. Cars rushing to destinations, people meeting lovers, friends gathering at restaurants where laughter spilled onto sidewalks. Up here, in 12,000 square feet of imported marble and custom everything, the silence was so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. It was 3 a.m. Adrian still wasn't home. Isabella pressed her palm against the cold glass, watching her breath fog the surface. She'd stopped waiting up for him 6 months ago, stopped asking where he'd been, stopped pretending this marriage was anything more than a beautiful arrangement that had stopped being beautiful somewhere around month 4. Mrs. Vale. The voice made her jump. Marcus, Adrian's head of security, stood in the doorway of the living room, his expression professionally blank. He was always there, a shadow with a gun, a reminder that even in her own home, she was never truly alone. "You should rest," Marcus said. It wasn't a suggestion. "I'm fine." Isabella turned back to the window, dismissing him the way she'd learned to dismiss everyone who worked for Adrian. They were loyal to him, not to her. Every housekeeper who cleaned around her, every driver who took her to approved destinations, every guard who followed 3 steps behind, they all reported back. She was the boss's wife, which meant she was the boss's property. Marcus didn't leave. "Mr. Vale will be home by dawn." "Thank you, Marcus." Her tone was ice. "You can go." He hesitated, just a fraction of a second, then nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Isabella listened to his footsteps fade, counting the seconds until she heard the elevator ding in the private foyer. Then she moved. Her hand shook as she opened the hidden panel in the walk-in closet, pulling out the small suitcase she'd been packing for 3 weeks. Not the Louis Vuitton luggage Adrian had given her for their first anniversary. This was a cheap black roller bag she'd bought with cash at a discount store during one of her approved shopping trips. Inside, clothes without designer labels, a burner phone still in its package, $10,000 in small bills she'd been skimming from household accounts, a fake ID she'd paid a fortune to obtain. Everything she needed to become someone else. Everything she needed to disappear. Isabella had planned this moment down to the minute. Adrian's schedule was predictable in its unpredictability. He'd be at the club until 4, then the warehouse until 6, home by 7 to shower and change before morning meetings. She had a 4-hour window. The night security rotated shifts at 3:30. The cameras in the service hallway had a blind spot near the freight elevator. The doorman on duty took a smoking break at 3:45, like clockwork. She'd studied her prison until she'd found the cracks. Now, standing in a closet full of clothes that had never felt like hers, wearing a simple black dress and flats she could run in, Isabella Rowe made a choice she'd been too afraid to make for 2 years. She was leaving. The elevator required a key card. Isabella had lifted Adrian's spare from his office 3 days ago, holding her breath while he'd been on a phone call 10 feet away, speaking rapid Italian to someone in Naples about a shipment problem she wasn't supposed to understand. But she did understand. More than Adrian knew. She'd learned Italian as a child, her grandmother's gift, hours spent in a kitchen that smelled like basil and secrets. She'd never told Adrian. It had felt like power, knowing something he didn't. Hearing the truth beneath the carefully edited English conversations he allowed her to witness. That's how she'd learned about the enemies circling closer, the Russians pushing into Adrian's territory, the betrayal within his own organization, the violence that was coming, whether he admitted it or not. And that's why she had to leave now, before she became collateral damage in a war she'd never signed up to fight. The elevator descended in smooth silence. Isabella watched the numbers drop. 25, 24, 23. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd done harder things. She'd survived her father's death, her mother's abandonment, 3 years putting herself through college while working 2 jobs. She'd survived meeting Adrian Vale at a charity gala where she'd been hired to serve champagne, and somehow catching the attention of a man who didn't do relationships. She'd survived becoming his wife in a wedding that felt more like a business merger than a marriage. She could survive leaving. The elevator stopped on the ground floor. Isabella stepped into the marble lobby, keeping her head down, her suitcase rolling quietly beside her. The night doorman's station was empty, right on schedule. She could see a silhouette outside through the glass doors, cigarette smoke curling into the night. 30 seconds to cross the lobby. 20 feet to the side exit, then freedom. She made it 15 feet before her phone buzzed. Isabella's blood turned to ice. She pulled the phone from her purse with trembling fingers, already knowing what she'd see. Adrian. Where are you going? 3 words. That's all it took for her carefully constructed escape to crumble. Isabella looked up slowly, scanning the lobby. No cameras visible, but that meant nothing. Adrian had eyes everywhere. She'd been stupid to think otherwise. Her phone buzzed again. Adrian. Don't make me ask twice. She could run, burst through the doors, lose herself in the city before he could mobilize his people. But Adrian Vale had resources she couldn't imagine, connections that stretched into every corner of organized crime on the East Coast. He'd find her. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but he'd find her. And then what? Isabella's finger hovered over the screen. Every instinct screamed at her to run anyway, to take the chance, to choose uncertain danger over certain captivity. But there was a reason she'd stayed this long, a reason she'd married him in the first place, knowing what he was. Adrian had saved her life once. She'd never asked him to, never wanted to owe him. But 3 years ago, when her landlord's nephew had cornered her in a parking garage with intentions that still made her sick to remember, Adrian had been there. Wrong place, right time. Or maybe he'd already been watching her. She'd never been sure. He'd handled it, quietly, permanently. And when she'd tried to thank him, tried to walk away clean, he'd looked at her with those cold green eyes and said, "You're under my protection now." She hadn't understood what that meant until later. Until the proposal that wasn't really a proposal. Until the wedding where she'd signed papers that felt more like contracts. Until she'd realized that Adrian Vale's protection came with strings made of titanium. Her phone buzzed a 3rd time. Adrian. Come home, Isabella. Home. As if this gilded cage had ever been home. But what choice did she have? Isabella turned around, rolling her suitcase back toward the elevator, each step feeling like defeat. The doorman still hadn't returned. No one had witnessed her failed escape except the cameras she couldn't see and the husband who saw everything. The elevator ride back up felt longer. Isabella stared at her reflection in the polished doors, a stranger in expensive simplicity, with haunted eyes and a spine that wouldn't quite straighten anymore. When had she become this person? When had she stopped fighting? The penthouse doors opened directly into the foyer. Isabella stepped out, pulling her suitcase behind her, and froze. Adrian stood in the center of the living room, still wearing the black suit from whatever business had kept him out all night. He hadn't loosened his tie, hadn't removed his jacket. He stood with the stillness of a predator, hands in his pockets, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. At 34, Adrian Vale was beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful. Sharp edges and cold precision, dark hair pushed back from a face too handsome to be trustworthy. 6'3" of controlled violence wrapped in Italian wool, eyes the color of winter ice. He'd never hit her, never even raised his voice. Somehow, that made it worse. His control was absolute, which meant his disappointment was devastating. You were leaving. His voice was quiet, flat, no question in it. Isabella set down her suitcase, refusing to cower. Yes. Why? The question caught her off guard. In 2 years of marriage, Adrian had never asked her why she did anything. He gave orders. She followed them. That was the arrangement. Because this isn't a marriage, Isabella said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. It's a prison sentence. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes, too quick to identify. I've given you everything. Except freedom. Freedom to do what? He took a step closer, and Isabella fought the urge to back away. To work minimum wage jobs? To live in apartments with broken locks? To trust the wrong people? To make my own choices? Your choices almost got you killed. There it was, the debt she could never repay. The night that had bound her to him more effectively than any wedding vow. That was 3 years ago, Isabella said. How long do I owe you for that? I didn't ask you to owe me anything. Adrian's control cracked just slightly, frustration bleeding into his tone. I asked you to marry me. You told me to marry you. There's a difference. Silence fell between them, thick and combustible. Isabella had never pushed back like this before. For 2 years, she'd been the perfect wife. Agreeable, decorative, silent. But standing here with her failed escape between them, she had nothing left to lose. You don't love me, she continued, the words tumbling out now that she'd started. You don't even know me. I'm a symbol, a trophy, proof that the great Adrian Vale can have whatever he wants. You think that's what you are to me? I don't know what I am to you. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. You won't talk to me. You won't tell me anything real. You come home at dawn smelling like smoke and blood, and I'm supposed to smile and pour your coffee and pretend I don't see the violence you're drowning in. Adrian's jaw tightened. The less you know, the safer you are. No, the less I know, the more controlled I am. There's a difference. He crossed the remaining distance between them in 3 strides, and Isabella's breath caught. This close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. Could smell his cologne mixed with cigarette smoke and something metallic that might have been blood. You want the truth? Adrian's voice dropped to something almost dangerous. Fine. My world is ugly, violent. People I work with don't negotiate. They eliminate. Every day I make decisions that would give you nightmares. I've built an empire on fear and loyalty, and it keeps me in power, but it also makes me enemies. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he touched her face with surprising gentleness, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. You, he said quietly, are the only soft thing in my life, the only person who looks at me like I might be human. Do you think I'd risk that by dragging you into the ugliness, by letting you see what I really am? Isabella's heart hammered. In 2 years, Adrian had never touched her like this, never looked at her like this. Their relationship had been cordial, distant, more like roommates than spouses. You don't get to make that choice for me, she whispered. I already did, the day I married you. Then you married a prisoner, not a wife. Something painful crossed Adrian's face, there and gone so quickly she almost missed it. His hand dropped from her face, and the distance returned like a wall slamming down between them. You're free to go, he said, his voice returning to that flat, emotionless tone. I won't stop you. Isabella stared at him, searching for the trap. Just like that? Just like that. He stepped back, gesturing toward her suitcase. Take whatever you need. I'll have Marcus arrange a car. It was exactly what she'd wanted. Freedom, escape, the chance to reclaim her life. So why did it feel like defeat? There's one condition, Adrian added, pulling his phone from his pocket. You wait until morning. Let me arrange protection for the first few weeks until you're settled somewhere safe. I don't need your protection. Yes, you do. His voice was hard now, businesslike. The Volkov family has been asking about you. Questions about my wife, about where she goes, what she does. I've kept you safe by keeping you close. The moment you leave, you become a target. Fear prickled down Isabella's spine. Why would they target me? Because hurting you hurts me. And right now, they're looking for leverage. The casual way he said it, like her potential murder was just another business calculation, made Isabella's stomach turn. This was his world, This was the reality he'd been shielding her from. So my choices are stay here as your prisoner or leave and become someone else's target. That's one way to look at it. How would you look at it? Adrian met her eyes, and for just a moment the mask slipped. She saw exhaustion there, frustration, something that might have been regret. I'd look at it as a woman I care about making a choice that could get her killed, he said quietly. But I can't keep you here against your will. I won't. The admission hung between them. A woman I care about, not love, never love, but care, which was apparently the best Adrian Vale could offer. Isabella looked at her suitcase, at the door, at the man who'd been her husband in name only for 2 years. Freedom was 26 floors away. All she had to do was walk. But she thought about the Volkovs, about the violence she'd heard in Adrian's late-night phone calls, about how quickly a body could disappear in this city, and how she'd have no one to call for help because she'd cut ties with everyone who'd cared about her to become Adrian's wife. I need time, she heard herself say, to think. Adrian nodded slowly. Take all the time you need. He turned to leave, heading toward his office, the one room in the penthouse she'd never been allowed to enter. But something made Isabella call out. Adrian? He stopped, looking back. Do you regret it? She asked. Marrying me? For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, so quietly, she almost missed it. Every day. The words should have hurt. Instead, they felt like the first honest thing he'd said to her in 2 years. Adrian disappeared into his office, the door closing with a soft click. Isabella stood alone in the living room, her packed suitcase beside her, freedom offered, and somehow more terrifying than captivity. She should leave. She should take the chance while she had it, risk the Volkovs, risk everything, because anything was better than living in this beautiful prison. But instead, she found herself rolling her suitcase back to the bedroom, unpacking with mechanical precision, hanging the anonymous clothes back in her closet next to the designer dresses that had never felt like hers. She told herself it was just for tonight, just until morning, when she could think clearly, just until she could plan better, prepare more thoroughly. But as dawn broke over the city and Adrian still didn't emerge from his office, Isabella lay in their massive bed, a bed they'd never shared, and admitted a truth she'd been avoiding for months. She wasn't just afraid of leaving, she was afraid of what it meant that she wanted to stay. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange stalemate. Adrian continued his routine, gone all night, home at dawn, present but distant. Isabella continued hers, approved shopping trips, approved gym sessions, approved everything except actual freedom. But something had shifted. Adrian started coming home earlier, started eating dinner at the table instead of in his office, started asking questions about her day that felt almost like real conversation. Isabella didn't trust it, didn't trust him, but she found herself answering anyway, filling the silence with small truths about the book she was reading, the documentary she'd watched, the conversation she'd had with the barista who didn't know she was a Mafia wife. They were playing at normalcy, and they both knew it. Then Isabella started feeling sick. It started subtly, a wave of nausea in the mornings, exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. She blamed stress, blamed the emotional toll of her failed escape and the strange new dynamic with Adrian. But her body knew the truth before her mind would accept it. She missed her period, then missed it again. Isabella stood in the bathroom, the same bathroom where she'd once stood with packed bags and desperate plans, staring at a pregnancy test she'd bought during an approved shopping trip, buried under groceries she didn't need. 2 pink lines. The world tilted. Isabella gripped the marble counter, her reflection staring back at her with wild eyes and skin gone pale. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Adrian Vale's child. The irony was devastating. In 2 years of marriage, they'd shared a bed exactly 3 times. Not out of passion or love or even desire, out of obligation. The clinical fulfillment of marital duties, scheduled and emotionless. She'd thought they'd been careful. She'd been on birth control. But apparently biology didn't care about her escape plans. Isabella's hands shook as she wrapped the test in tissue paper, shoving it to the bottom of the bathroom trash. She needed time to think, to process, to figure out what this meant for her future, a future that had just become infinitely more complicated. She couldn't leave now, not pregnant, not with Adrian's child. The Volkovs would see her as an even bigger target. And Adrian, what would Adrian do when he found out? Isabella spent the day in a fog, going through the motions of her gilded routine while her mind raced in circles. She had to tell him. She had no choice. But the thought of speaking the words out loud made her want to vomit, though that might have just been the morning sickness. Adrian came home early that evening, 8 o'clock instead of his usual dawn arrival. Isabella heard the elevator, heard his footsteps, and felt her heart drop into her stomach. She found him in the kitchen, pouring himself a drink. Whiskey, neat. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, and there was blood on his cuff that he hadn't noticed yet. "You're home early," Isabella said, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. Adrian looked up, and something in his expression made her pulse quicken. He looked tense, worried even, though Adrian Vale didn't do worry. "We need to talk," he said. The words every woman dreaded. Isabella's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, then dropped quickly. "About what?" Adrian drained his whiskey in one swallow, then set the glass down with careful precision. "I had my security team run a routine sweep of the penthouse this morning." Isabella's blood ran cold. "Why?" "Standard procedure. We do it monthly." He paused, his eyes finding hers. "They found surveillance equipment, cameras, microphones. Someone's been watching us." The room spun. Isabella gripped the counter for support, the pregnancy test suddenly the least of her problems. "Who?" she managed to ask. "I don't know yet, but they've been active for at least 3 months." Adrian's jaw tightened. "They've been watching everything, every room except my office. That's the only place with proper countermeasures." 3 months. Someone had been watching them for 3 months, watching her pack her suitcase, watching her plan her escape, watching every private moment she'd thought was private. "The Volkovs?" Isabella asked, though she already knew the answer. "Most likely." Adrian poured another drink but didn't touch it. "They're getting bolder, more desperate. The shipment I intercepted last month cost them millions. They want revenge. And I'm the revenge." It wasn't a question. Adrian's silence was answer enough. Isabella felt the walls closing in, the beautiful penthouse transforming from prison to tomb. "What do we do?" "I'm moving you tonight. Safe house outside the city. Full security detail. You'll be—" "No." Adrian's head snapped up. "No? I'm not running." The words surprised her, but once she said them, Isabella knew they were true. "I'm not hiding in some safe house while you handle this. I'm done being shuffled around like property. This isn't about control. It's always about control." Isabella's voice rose, 2 weeks of tension finally breaking through. "You control where I go, who I see, what I know. Now you want to control where I hide. I'm done, Adrian. You're being unreasonable. I'm being honest." She took a breath, steadying herself. "You want to protect me? Fine. But you do it by including me, not excluding me. Tell me what's happening. Tell me who we're fighting. Treat me like a partner instead of a liability." Adrian stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You don't understand what you're asking. Then make me understand. People die in my world, Isabella." The words exploded out of him, Adrian's control finally cracking. "People I care about, people I trust. They die bloody and screaming, and I can't stop it. I can't protect everyone, but I can protect you. If you just let me. I don't want to be protected. I want to be trusted." Silence fell like a hammer. They stood on opposite sides of the kitchen island, breathing hard. 2 years of unspoken resentment and fear finally laid bare between them. Then Adrian laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You want trust? In this life? There's no such thing." "Then what are we doing?" Isabella asked quietly. "Why are we even married if there's no trust, no honesty, no partnership?" "Because I couldn't let you go." The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Adrian looked away, jaw tight, like he regretted the words the moment they left his mouth. "You think I wanted this?" he continued, his voice rough. "You think I wanted to tie you to my world? To put a target on your back just by association? I should have left you alone that night, should have handled your problem and walked away. But I looked at you, broken and brave and so damn stubborn, and I couldn't." Isabella's heart hammered against her ribs. "Couldn't what?" Couldn't stop thinking about you. Couldn't stop seeing your face. Couldn't stop wanting. He trailed off, shaking his head. It doesn't matter. The point is, I made a selfish choice, and you've been paying for it ever since. So this is guilt? Isabella tried to process his words to understand what he was actually saying. The marriage, the protection, the distance, it's all guilt? It's survival. Adrian finally looked at her again, and the raw pain in his eyes stole her breath. You survive in my world by not caring too much, by keeping the people you love at arm's length, because the moment someone sees what matters to you, they use it against you. The people you love. Isabella's mind caught on the words, turning them over, examining them from every angle. You love me, she said slowly, testing the theory. That's why you've been so distant. You love me, and you think it makes me vulnerable. Adrian's silence was deafening. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. His eyes snapped to hers, surprise breaking through the careful control. You think distance protects me? Isabella continued, feeling something like anger rising in her chest. You think not talking to me, not trusting me, keeping me in the dark, you think that makes me safe? All it does is make me isolated, unprepared, a perfect target because I have no idea what's coming. You don't need to know. Yes, I do. She slammed her hand on the counter, surprising them both. If someone's going to target me because I'm your wife, then I need to know why. Who? How to protect myself. Treating me like expensive china doesn't make me safer. It makes me more breakable. Adrian opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked completely off balance. I can't lose you, he finally said, the words barely above a whisper. And there it was. The truth beneath all the distance, all the control. Adrian Vale, ruthless crime boss feared by the entire eastern seaboard, was terrified of losing her. Isabella felt something crack in her chest, not breaking, opening. Then stop pushing me away, she said softly. Stop treating me like I'm fragile. I survived before you. I can survive with you. But not like this. Not in separate rooms, separate lives, married only on paper. Adrian crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that Isabella had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. This close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the worry he tried to hide, the war raging behind his carefully constructed walls. If I let you in, he said quietly, if I tell you everything, show you everything, you might not like what you see. I already know what you are, Adrian. I've known since the night we met. Knowing and seeing are different things. Then let me see. Isabella raised her hand, hesitating just before touching his face. Let me decide if I can handle it. Stop making that choice for me. For a long moment, Adrian didn't move. Then slowly, he leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly like the simple contact caused physical pain. When he opened them again, something had shifted, a decision made. Okay, he said. Okay, but not tonight. Tonight, we leave. Tomorrow, when you're safe, I'll tell you everything. Adrian, please. The word sounded foreign in his mouth, like he wasn't used to asking for anything. Just this one thing. Let me get you somewhere safe. Then I'll answer every question. Tell you every ugly truth. But tonight, I need to know you're protected. Isabella wanted to argue, wanted to push, but the genuine fear in Adrian's eyes stopped her. One condition, she said. Name it. We go together. No separate cars, no sending me ahead. We face this together. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Together. And Adrian? Isabella took a breath, knowing she couldn't wait any longer. There's something I need to tell you first. He searched her face, reading something there that made him tense. What is it? The words should have been hard, should have caught in her throat. But looking at Adrian, really looking at him, seeing past the cold boss to the terrified man beneath, they came easier than she expected. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed was absolute. Adrian went completely still, his face shifting through expressions too quickly to track. Shock, disbelief, fear, and something else. Something that looked almost like hope. He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. About 8 weeks, I think. I took a test this morning. Adrian's hand moved to her stomach before he seemed to realize what he was doing, hovering just above the fabric of her dress like he was afraid to make contact. Is it? He stopped, shook his head. Stupid question. Of course it's mine. Not that stupid. We've barely... I remember. His voice was rough. I remember every time. The admission sent heat through Isabella's veins. She'd thought those 3 nights had meant nothing to him, clinical necessity, but the way he was looking at her now, the way his hand trembled slightly above her stomach. This changes things, Adrian said. Everything, Isabella agreed. He finally made contact, his palm warm against her stomach where their child was growing. The gesture was so gentle, so completely at odds with everything she knew about Adrian Vale that tears pricked her eyes. I can't lose you, Adrian repeated, his voice breaking slightly. Either of you. Then stop trying to protect us by pushing us away. Adrian pulled her close suddenly, his arms wrapping around her with surprising strength. Isabella stiffened for just a moment. They'd never embraced like this, never been close without obligation or schedule, then melted into him, her head finding his shoulder like it had always belonged there. I'm going to do this wrong, Adrian murmured into her hair. I'm going to make mistakes. I don't know how to be a husband, let alone a father. Then we'll figure it out together. Together, he repeated, like testing out a foreign concept. They stood like that for a long moment, 2 people who'd been married for 2 years finally finding their way to each other. Isabella breathed in his scent, smoke and expensive cologne and something uniquely Adrian, and felt the tears finally escape. Not from sadness, from relief. Maybe they had a chance after all. Then Adrian's phone buzzed. He pulled away reluctantly, checking the screen. Isabella watched his face transform, warmth draining away, replaced by the cold mask of the crime boss. What is it? She asked, though she already knew it was bad. Marcus. Adrian's voice was flat, professional. There's been an incident at the club. 3 of my men are dead. Isabella's blood ran cold. The Volkovs? Most likely. He was already moving, grabbing his jacket, checking the gun she knew he kept in the kitchen drawer. I need to handle this. We need to handle this, Isabella corrected. Together, remember? Adrian turned to her, conflict clear on his face. She could see him warring with himself, the instinct to protect versus the promise he'd just made. Please, Isabella said. Don't shut me out, not now. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded sharply. Get your coat. We leave in 5 minutes. And Isabella? His eyes met hers, hard as winter. Stay close to me. No matter what happens, stay close. She nodded, already moving toward the bedroom. As she grabbed her coat, real clothes, not the designer armor she usually wore, Isabella caught sight of herself in the mirror. She looked different, alive in a way she hadn't been in 2 years. Terrified, yes. Walking into danger she barely understood, but finally moving forward instead of standing still in a gilded cage. Isabella touched her stomach briefly, a promise to the life growing there. We're going to survive this. All of us. Then she turned and walked back to Adrian, ready to face whatever came next. Together. The club was chaos contained in pulsing music and dim red lights. Isabella had never been to Adrian's businesses before. Wives weren't allowed in the places where money was really made, where deals were struck with handshakes that meant more than contracts. But tonight, walking through the back entrance with Adrian's hand pressed against her lower back, she stepped into a world she'd only heard about in phone calls he thought she couldn't understand. Marcus met them at the door, his usually composed face tight with tension. Blood spattered his shirt collar. 3 dead, he confirmed, keeping his voice low beneath the bass that thrummed through the walls. Dimitri, Santos, and Kyle. Clean shots. Professional. Where? Adrian's voice was ice. VIP section. Dimitri was running security for the poker game. Santos and Kyle were backup. Marcus's eyes flicked to Isabella, uncertainty crossing his features. Sir, should Mrs. Vale be here? She stays with me. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. What about the shooter? Gone. Probably had help from inside. The cameras in that section went dark 30 seconds before the shots. Someone knew exactly where to hit us. Adrian's jaw clenched, and Isabella felt the fury radiating off him in waves. She'd seen him angry before, controlled, cold anger that made people disappear. This was different. This was personal. "Show me," Adrian said. They moved through the club, and Isabella tried not to stare at the world Adrian inhabited when he left her alone in the penthouse. Beautiful people in expensive clothes, moving to music that cost more than most people's rent. But underneath the glamour, she saw the guards positioned at every exit, the cameras tracking every face, the tension in the shoulders of Adrian's men as they watched their boss move through the crowd with his pregnant wife in tow. She was a disruption to the order. She could see it in their faces. The VIP section had been cordoned off, thick velvet ropes and two stone-faced guards keeping curious onlookers away. Adrian pushed through without slowing, and Isabella followed, her heart hammering. She'd seen death on television, in movies. Never like this. The three bodies had been covered with black sheets, but blood pooled beneath them, soaking into expensive carpet. The poker table was still set up, cards scattered across green felt, chips stacked in neat towers that would never be collected. Champagne glasses sat half full, abandoned when bullets had started flying. Isabella's hand went to her mouth, bile rising in her throat. Morning sickness and murder scenes didn't mix. Adrian's hand found hers immediately, steady and warm. "Breathe," he said quietly. "Just breathe." She focused on his voice, on the pressure of his fingers laced through hers, and forced the nausea down. She demanded to be included. She didn't get to fall apart now. "Who was playing?" Adrian asked Marcus, his eyes scanning the scene with professional detachment. "The usual Monday game. Dimitri was hosting. The players scattered when the shooting started. We're tracking them down now for statements." "They won't talk." Adrian crouched beside the nearest body, lifting the sheet enough to see the face beneath. Isabella looked away, but not before she saw the neat hole in the center of the man's forehead. Professional, like Marcus had said. Execution style. "This wasn't a message," Adrian continued, standing. "This was a test. They wanted to see how fast we'd respond, what our protocols are. They're studying us." "For what?" Isabella found her voice, though it came out shakier than she'd intended. Adrian looked at her, something like approval flickering in his eyes. "For the real attack. This is reconnaissance. They kill a few soldiers, see how we react, learn our patterns, then they strike where it actually hurts." "You," Isabella said. "They're going to come after you. Eventually, but first—" He stopped, his expression shifting to something darker. "They'll come after what I care about, my businesses, my people." His eyes met hers. "My family." The word hung between them, heavy with new meaning. Family. Not just her anymore. Their child, growing inside her, already a target before it had even drawn breath. "We need to leave," Marcus said urgently. "Sir, if they're watching, if they know you're here, let them watch." Adrian's voice was cold fury. "I want them to see what happens when they touch what's mine." He pulled out his phone, dialing a number Isabella didn't recognize. When someone answered, Adrian spoke in rapid Italian, too fast for her to catch most of it. But she heard names, locations, orders delivered with absolute authority. When he hung up, his expression was set in stone. "What did you just do?" Isabella asked. "Started a war." Adrian took her hand again, leading her toward the exit. "We're going to the safe house now. No arguments." "I'm not arguing," Isabella said, and it was true. She'd seen enough, understood enough. Adrian's world wasn't just dangerous, it was deadly, and it wouldn't hesitate to swallow her whole if she wasn't careful. They made it to the car without incident, a black SUV with bulletproof glass and Marcus behind the wheel. Adrian put Isabella in the back seat, sliding in beside her, his body positioned between her and the window, protective, vigilant. As they pulled away from the club, Isabella watched the neon lights fade into darkness, her mind racing. "You knew this was coming," she said quietly. "That's why you wanted me to leave." "I suspected." "How long?" Adrian was silent for a moment, his jaw tight. 3 months, since the first shipment went missing. The Volkovs blamed me, but I didn't take it. Someone else is making plays trying to start a war between our organizations." "Who?" "If I knew that, they'd already be dead." He looked at her, and she saw the exhaustion beneath his anger. This isn't how I wanted you to see my world. I know. Isabella reached for his hand, finding it clenched into a fist on his thigh. Slowly she worked his fingers open, lacing them through hers. But I'd rather see it than be kept blind. Even after that? Adrian gestured back toward the club, toward the bodies they'd left behind. Especially after that. Because now I understand what you're protecting me from, and why you need help doing it. Something shifted in Adrian's expression, a crack in the armor he wore. You're not what I expected, Isabella Rowe. Vale, she corrected softly. Isabella Vale. It was the first time she'd claimed his name as her own. In 2 years of marriage, she'd always thought of herself as Isabella Rowe, prisoner in a gilded cage. But sitting here, her hand in his, both of them targets in a war they hadn't chosen, she was his wife. For better or worse. And right now, it was definitely worse. The safe house was 40 minutes outside the city, tucked away in the kind of neighborhood where people paid premium prices for privacy. Large lots, tall fences, neighbors who minded their own business. Adrian owned the whole street, according to Marcus. Every house, every security system, every potential line of sight controlled. The house itself was beautiful. Modern architecture hidden behind old-growth trees, all glass and clean lines. Nothing like the ornate penthouse. This felt more real somehow, less for show. We'll be safe here, Adrian said, helping Isabella out of the car. Round-the-clock security, provisions for 2 months if necessary, panic room in the basement if things go wrong. Comforting, Isabella muttered, looking around at the quiet street. It was 2 in the morning and not a single light shone in any of the surrounding houses. Empty shells, all of them. Just Adrian's paranoia made manifest. Though after tonight, she was starting to think it wasn't paranoia if people were actually trying to kill you. Inside the house was furnished, but impersonal. Expensive furniture arranged by designers who'd never met the people living here. A place to hide, not a home. Isabella felt a pang of longing for the penthouse, which was ridiculous considering she'd been trying to escape it 2 weeks ago. There are bedrooms upstairs, Adrian said, setting down the bag Marcus had packed for them. Take whichever one you want. I'll be... No. Isabella turned to face him, blocking his path. No separate rooms. Not tonight. Adrian's eyes widened slightly. Isabella, I'm pregnant, exhausted, and terrified, she interrupted. I just watched you order a war over the phone and saw 3 dead bodies. I am not sleeping alone tonight. For a moment, he just looked at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. They ended up in the master bedroom, a space dominated by a king-size bed that somehow felt more intimate than the massive mattress in the penthouse they'd never shared. Isabella borrowed one of Adrian's shirts to sleep in, soft cotton that smelled like him, while he disappeared into the bathroom. When he emerged, he'd stripped down to his boxers, and Isabella couldn't help but stare. She'd seen him shirtless before, but always in passing, always with distance between them. Now watching him move through the bedroom with economical grace, she noticed details she'd missed. The scars. So many scars. A long, puckered line across his ribs. What looked like a bullet wound on his left shoulder. Smaller marks scattered across his torso. Knife fights, probably. Evidence of violence survived, written into his skin. Adrian caught her looking and stopped. I told you. My world is ugly. You're not ugly, Isabella said quietly. You're a survivor. Something painful crossed his face. He crossed to the bed, sliding under the covers with careful distance between them. Isabella turned off the light and lay down, her back to him, staring at shadows on the wall. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything unsaid. Then Adrian's voice, barely above a whisper. I was 17 when I got the one on my ribs. My father's enemies thought killing his son would send a message. They were right, just not the message they intended. Isabella rolled over to face him. In the darkness, she could barely make out his profile. What message did it send, she asked. That nothing is sacred, no one is safe. Love makes you weak. His voice was flat, reciting lessons learned in blood. My father loved my mother, and they killed her to hurt him. He loved me, and they came after me next. Love is a weapon in this world, Isabella. The moment someone knows what you care about, they use it to destroy you. So you decided never to care. I decided never to show I care. There's a difference. Isabella's heart ached. She thought about the distance he'd maintained, the walls he'd built. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. Your father, she said carefully. What happened to him? He got sloppy, let his guard down. 3 years after they killed my mother, they finished the job. Adrian's voice was matter of fact, but Isabella heard the pain beneath. I was 19, inherited an empire and 100 enemies before I was old enough to legally drink. I'm sorry. Don't be. I burned them all down. Every single person who had a hand in killing my parents. I made sure they understood what happens when you come after my family. The word again. Family. It meant something different to Adrian than to most people. Not blood and love and safety, obligation and vengeance and survival. Isabella reached across the space between them, finding his hand in the darkness. I won't be your weakness, Adrian. I'll be your strength. He squeezed her fingers. You already are. That's what terrifies me. They lay like that, hands linked across expensive sheets. 2 people learning how to be married after 2 years of practice at being strangers. Tell me something true, Isabella said after a while. Something you've never told anyone. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I never wanted this life. The empire, the power, the violence. I wanted to be a lawyer. Stupid, right? The son of a crime boss, dreaming about arguing cases in court instead of settling disputes with bullets? Isabella tried to imagine it. Adrian in a courtroom instead of a club, fighting with words instead of weapons. What stopped you? My father died, and I learned that some things matter more than dreams, like survival, like protecting what's left of your family. He paused. Like revenge. Do you regret it? Every single day. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the gesture unconscious. But I'm good at it. Better than my father ever was. I built something that can't be easily destroyed, and that matters when you have people depending on you. People like me. Especially like you. Isabella scooted closer, closing the distance between them until her head rested on his shoulder. Adrian stiffened for just a moment, then his arm came around her, holding her against his chest. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Good. Fear keeps you alive. I'm scared for our baby, for what kind of world we're bringing them into. Adrian's hand moved to her stomach, his palm warm through the thin fabric of his borrowed shirt. I won't let anything happen to either of you. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, you'll both be safe. Even if it means war. Especially if it means war. They fell silent again, but this time it was comfortable. Isabella listened to Adrian's heartbeat, steady beneath her ear, and felt her exhaustion finally catching up. It had been the longest day of her life, from pregnancy test to murder scene to sleeping in her husband's arms for the first time. Adrian? She murmured, half asleep. I don't regret marrying you. His arms tightened around her. Ask me again when this is over. But Isabella was already asleep, lulled by warmth and safety and the promise of tomorrow. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, disorientation swamped her. This wasn't the penthouse, wasn't her bedroom. Then memory returned in a rush. The club, the bodies, the safe house. Adrian's side of the bed was empty but still warm. Isabella found him in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian while he poured coffee into 2 mugs. He'd pulled on jeans and a t-shirt, his hair still wet from the shower, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Until he saw her, and his expression shifted to concern. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, then ended the call. You should be resting. I'm pregnant, not dying. Isabella accepted the mug he offered. Decaf, she noticed. He'd remembered. What's happening? Adrian hesitated, and she saw him weighing how much to tell her. Old habits dying hard. The truth, she reminded him. We agreed. The truth is complicated. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Last night's attack wasn't random. The 3 men who died, they all worked security for my financial operations. Someone is targeting the people who know where the money flows. Following the money trail. Exactly. which means someone inside my organization is feeding information to the Volkovs. Someone close enough to know schedules, security rotations, who handles what. Isabella's stomach dropped. You have a traitor. I have several, probably. The question is who and how deep the rot goes. Adrian's expression was grim. I've spent the morning making calls, rearranging security, moving assets. But until I know who I can trust, everyone is suspect. Even Marcus? Even Marcus. He said it with obvious reluctance. He's been with me for 8 years. I'd trust him with my life, but I can't trust him with yours. Not until I know for certain. The weight of that, of Adrian trusting no one, suspecting everyone, settled over Isabella like a heavy blanket. This was his life. Constant vigilance, perpetual paranoia. No real relationships because anyone could be the knife aimed at your back. That sounds exhausting, she said quietly. It is. Adrian crossed to her, his hands finding her waist with surprising gentleness. But it's kept me alive this long, and now it's going to keep you alive too. Isabella set down her coffee and wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer. We're going to figure this out. Together. Together, he repeated, like the word was still foreign, but becoming familiar. They stood like that for a long moment, finding comfort in proximity, in the simple act of holding and being held. Isabella breathed in his scent, soap and coffee and something uniquely Adrian, and felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. Then Adrian's phone rang, shattering the moment. He pulled away reluctantly, checking the screen. His expression darkened immediately. What? Isabella asked, dread pooling in her stomach. Unknown number. Adrian showed her the screen, and Isabella saw what had made him tense. Not a call, a text message, a photo. Of them. Last night at the club, Adrian's hand on Isabella's back, leading her through the crowd. Below the image, 5 words. Beautiful family, shame to lose it. Isabella's blood turned to ice. They were watching. They're always watching. Adrian's voice was deadly calm, but she could see the fury in his eyes. They took this while we were inside, which means they have people close, very close. Another text came through. Another photo. This one was of the safe house, taken from across the street, showing the bedroom window. Their bedroom window. Nice try. But you can't hide from us. They know where we are, Isabella's voice shook. They followed us here. Adrian was already moving, grabbing his phone, dialing rapidly. Marcus, we're compromised. Safe house is burned. Yes, both of us. No, I don't know how they... He stopped, listening to something that made his jaw clench. When? How long ago? And you're just telling me now? He hung up, his expression carved from stone. What? Isabella demanded. One of the guards on the perimeter is missing. Disappeared during shift change 3 hours ago. Adrian grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the stairs. We're leaving, now. Where? Anywhere but here. Move, Isabella. She moved, her heart hammering. Adrian grabbed the go-bag from the bedroom while Isabella shoved her feet into shoes, her mind racing. The guard who'd disappeared, had he been taken or had he run? Was he a victim or a traitor? They made it to the ground floor when Adrian's phone rang again. He answered without slowing, his free hand pressed against Isabella's back, guiding her toward the garage. What do you mean they found him? Adrian stopped dead, his face going white. Where? Jesus Christ, don't touch anything. I'm on my way. He hung up, and the look in his eyes made Isabella's blood run cold. The missing guard? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Dead. They left his body at my office downtown with a note. Adrian's voice was hollow. It says, "Stop looking for traitors. We already own everyone you trust." The words hung between them, devastating in their simplicity. Adrian pulled Isabella close, his arms tight around her. I'm going to get you out of this. I swear to God, I'm going to end this. How? Isabella asked against his chest. If they've turned your own people against you, if they know everywhere we go, how do we fight that? I don't know yet. His honesty was terrifying. But I'll figure it out. I always do. A sound from outside made them both freeze. Footsteps on gravel, multiple sets. Adrian's hand went to the gun at his back, his body shifting to put himself between Isabella and the door. Get behind me. When I say run, you run to the panic room. Don't stop, don't look back, understand? Isabella nodded, terror closing her throat. The footsteps came closer, stopped right outside the front door. Then a knock. Calm, almost polite. Mr. Vale? An unfamiliar voice, accented. Russian. We just want to talk. Adrian's expression didn't change, but Isabella felt the tension coiling through his body. About what? About the future. About choices. About what happens next. A pause. We know Mrs. Vale is with you. Congratulations on the pregnancy, by the way. A child is such a blessing, such a fragile, precious thing. Isabella's hand went to her stomach instinctively. Adrian's grip on his gun tightened. You have 10 seconds to leave my property, Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. After that, I start shooting. So hostile, we're not here to fight, Mr. Vale. We're here to deliver a message from our employer. A proposal, if you will. I don't negotiate with people who kill my men. No? Not even when your wife's life hangs in the balance? Not even when we know exactly where she is every moment of every day? Not even when we could end this right now through this door before you could protect her? The threat was clear, unmistakable. Adrian's jaw clenched so hard Isabella heard his teeth grind. What's the proposal? Our employer wants what you took, the shipment from 3 months ago. Return it along with a substantial apology fee, and all of this ends. Your men stop dying, your wife stays safe, your child grows up with a father. I don't have your shipment, I told you that. Then find who does. You have 72 hours, Mr. Vale. After that, the price goes up. And trust us, you don't want to pay it. Silence. Then the footsteps retreated, moving back down the gravel drive. Adrian didn't move, didn't lower the gun, until the sound of a car engine faded into the distance. Then his legs seemed to give out. He sat down hard on the floor, his back against the wall, the gun loose in his hand. Adrian? Isabella knelt beside him, her hand on his face. Adrian, look at me. He did, and she saw something she'd never seen before in his eyes. Fear, real, genuine fear. I can't protect you, he said hoarsely. They're everywhere. They know everything. I can't. Stop. Isabella took his face in both hands, forcing him to focus. Stop spiraling. We're alive. We're together. That's what matters. For how long? 3 days? A week? They're going to keep coming, and I don't know how to stop them. Then we figure it out, but not alone, Adrian. You can't do this alone anymore. You need help. I can't trust anyone. You can trust me. Isabella's voice was firm, cutting through his panic. Look at me. You can trust me. So start talking. Tell me everything. Every detail about this shipment, about the Volkovs, about who might want to start a war between you. Everything. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, war raging behind his eyes. Trust or control, partnership or isolation. Finally, he nodded. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. But not here. We need to move, need to get somewhere actually safe. Where? The only place they haven't found yet. Adrian stood, pulling Isabella up with him. Somewhere I've never taken anyone. Somewhere that exists off the books, outside the organization. You have a place like that? I have 3. I'm not completely stupid. A ghost of his usual confidence flickered across his face. Come on, we're going dark. No phones, no security detail, no electronic trail. Just you and me. And our baby, Isabella added, her hand on her stomach. Adrian's expression softened. And our baby. They left through the basement, through a tunnel Adrian revealed by moving a false wall in the wine cellar. It led 2 houses down, emerging in an empty garage where a nondescript Honda waited with keys under the mat. Told you I planned for everything, Adrian said, sliding behind the wheel. Isabella buckled in, looking back at the house they were leaving behind. Somewhere out there, the Volkovs were watching, waiting, counting down 72 hours to a deadline Adrian couldn't meet. But as they pulled away, heading toward a destination only Adrian knew, Isabella felt something unexpected. Hope. Because for the first time in 2 years, they were facing the danger together. No distance, no walls, no secrets, just partnership. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The cabin was 3 hours north, buried so deep in the mountains that cell service was a distant memory, and the nearest neighbor was a concept rather than a reality. Adrian drove in silence, his eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror, his jaw tight with tension that hadn't eased since they'd fled the safe house. Isabella watched the city fade behind them, replaced by endless trees and winding roads that seemed to lead nowhere. She'd asked where they were going twice. Both times, Adrian had simply said, "Somewhere safe." She'd stopped asking after that, recognizing the walls going back up, the distance returning. Old habits were hard to break. They stopped once at a gas station so remote it still had analog pumps. Adrian paid cash, filled the tank, and bought supplies with bills he pulled from a hidden compartment under the driver's seat. Bottled water, crackers, protein bars, food for people on the run. "How long are we staying wherever we're going?" Isabella asked as he loaded the bags into the back seat. "As long as it takes." That's not an answer. Adrian's eyes met hers over the roof of the car, and she saw exhaustion there beneath the determination. "I don't have answers right now, Isabella. Just plans. And the plan is to keep you alive long enough to figure out who's trying to kill us." The bluntness of it, the casual mention of murder like discussing the weather, should have shocked her. But after last night, after the bodies and the threats and the photos, Isabella found she'd moved past shock into something harder, something that felt almost like anger. "We need to talk," she said. "Really talk. Not just you giving orders and me following them. We need to figure this out together." "I know." Adrian climbed back into the car. "When we get there, I promise." The cabin appeared like something from a fairy tale. If fairy tales involved paranoid crime bosses and emergency bolt holes, small, wooden, weathered by seasons of neglect, solar panels on the roof, a generator humming somewhere out of sight. No driveway, just a dirt path that Adrian navigated with practiced ease. He'd been here before. Recently, based on how smoothly he unlocked the door, how familiar he was with the layout. Inside was sparse but functional. One main room serving as kitchen and living space, a bedroom barely big enough for the queen-size bed, a bathroom with a shower that had seen better decades. Everything covered in a thin layer of dust that spoke of months without use. "It's not much," Adrian said, setting down their bags. "But it's off-grid. No paper trail, no digital footprint. I bought it through so many shell companies, even I barely remember the path. As far as anyone knows, this place doesn't exist." Isabella walked through the space, her fingers trailing over rough wood surfaces. "How many people know about this?" "Just me. I built it myself, mostly. Took 6 months of weekends back when I was 22 and paranoid enough to think I might need a place to disappear. Looks like your paranoia paid off." "It usually does." Adrian moved to the kitchen, checking cabinets, taking inventory. "There's canned food, water filtration system feeds from the well. We can last weeks here if we need to." "We don't have weeks. We have 72 hours. "I'm aware." His voice was sharp, stress fracturing through his control. "I'm very aware of the countdown, Isabella." She crossed to him, putting her hand on his arm. He flinched like her touch burned but didn't pull away. "Then talk to me," she said quietly. "Tell me about this shipment. Tell me why the Volkovs think you have it. Tell me who else might be involved. Because standing here in the middle of nowhere isn't solving anything." Adrian looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. He moved to the worn couch, sitting down heavily, his elbows on his knees. Isabella sat beside him, close enough to touch, but giving him space to find the words. 3 months ago, Adrian began, a shipment came through the port. High-value pharmaceuticals, the legal kind, believe it or not, worth about $40 million on the black market. It was supposed to be Volkov territory, their contacts, their distribution, but the shipment never made it to them. Someone stole it. Someone intercepted it, clean, professional, no witnesses, no evidence. The shipment just vanished between the port and the warehouse. Adrian ran his hands through his hair. "The Volkovs blamed me immediately. We've been competitors for years, tensions have been high. It made sense from their perspective. But you didn't take it." "I swear to you, I didn't. I have my own supply chains, my own connections. I don't need to steal from the Volkovs. It's not worth the war it would start." He looked at her, and she saw the truth in his eyes. "But someone wanted that war. Someone set this up perfectly, knowing the Volkovs would assume it was me. Isabella processed this, pieces clicking into place. Someone trying to take you both down, start a war, let you destroy each other, then move into the power vacuum. Exactly. Which means we're looking for someone ambitious, connected, and smart enough to play us both. Who fits that description? Adrian laughed bitterly. In my world, dozens of people. But to pull off something this sophisticated, with access to both organizations, that narrows it down. To who? I have 3 names. 3 people who had the opportunity, the knowledge, and the motivation. Adrian pulled out a small notebook from his jacket. Actual paper, she noticed, not digital. Smart. Vincent Caruso, my second-in-command, knows everything about my operation, has contacts with the Volkovs through his cousin who married into their family. You think Vincent would betray you? I don't want to think it. He's been with me for 12 years. But $40 million in control of the eastern seaboard would tempt anyone. Adrian's jaw clenched. Then there's Nikolai Volkov, Dmitri's younger brother. Ambitious, ruthless, constantly pushing for more aggressive expansion. He'd benefit from his brother going to war with me. Either Dmitri wins and Nikolai gets the spoils, or Dmitri dies and Nikolai takes over. And the third? Adrian hesitated, and Isabella saw something that looked like pain cross his face. Elena Marchetti. She runs logistics for the port operations, works with both families to keep things running smoothly. She's been a friend for 15 years. We grew up together. The way he said friend made Isabella's stomach tighten. How close of a friend? Close enough that I trust her. Or I did. Adrian met Isabella's eyes. We were engaged once. Before I met you, before I understood what real connection felt like. The admission hung between them, another piece of Adrian's past he'd never shared. Isabella pushed down the irrational spike of jealousy. What did it matter who he'd been with before? But it did matter, somehow. It mattered that he'd never mentioned her. What happened? Isabella asked. She wanted more than I could give, wanted love, partnership, all the things I didn't think I was capable of. We ended it amicably, stayed friends. She's been helping me run operations ever since. Adrian's expression darkened. But she has access to everything, every shipment, every route, every contact. If anyone could pull this off cleanly, it's Elena. Do you think she would? I don't know. And that's what terrifies me. I don't know who to trust anymore. Isabella took his hand, lacing their fingers together. You can trust me. I know. He squeezed her fingers. You're the only person I'm certain of right now. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation settling around them like the dust in the cabin. Outside, birds sang their evening songs, oblivious to the human drama unfolding. The sun was starting to set, painting the trees in shades of gold and amber. We need to contact them, Isabella said finally. Your 3 suspects. See who reacts, how they react. Someone will slip up. Too dangerous. The moment I reach out, they'll know where I am. Not if we're smart about it. Isabella's mind was racing, piecing together a plan. You said this place is off-grid. No digital footprint. What if we use that? Make them think you've gone to one of your other safe houses? Adrian's eyes sharpened with interest. Feed false information through channels we know are compromised. Exactly. Give each suspect a different location. See who shows up where. Whoever sends people to the right place is our traitor. That could work? Adrian was nodding now, his tactical mind engaging with the problem. I'd need to make contact carefully, use different methods for each one. A phone call to Vincent, email to Nikolai, in-person message to Elena through a courier. And you monitor all 3 locations remotely. Cameras you've already installed, I'm guessing? A ghost of a smile crossed Adrian's face. I told you, paranoia pays off. All 3 backup locations have surveillance that feeds to encrypted servers I can access from anywhere. Then we have a plan. Isabella felt a surge of something that might have been hope. We flush out the traitor, we get proof, and we take it to the Volkovs. Show them who really stole their shipment. It's risky. If I'm wrong about one of them, if I tip our hand too early, then we adapt. But doing nothing isn't an option, Adrian. That deadline isn't stopping. He looked at her, really looked at her, and Isabella saw something shift in his expression, admiration mixed with surprise, like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. "You're good at this," he said quietly. "At what?" "Strategy, problem solving, being a partner instead of just a wife." "I told you, I'm stronger than you think." "I'm beginning to understand that." Adrian stood, pulling her up with him. "We'll need supplies, burner phones, a laptop that can't be traced. There's a town about an hour south, small enough to be off the radar, big enough to have what we need. We should go now, before it gets dark." "No." Adrian's hand found her stomach, protective and gentle. "You should rest. You're exhausted, and stress isn't good for the baby. I'll go. Be back in 2 hours. You'll be safe here." Isabella started to argue, then stopped. The exhaustion was real. She could feel it in her bones, heavy and insistent. And the morning sickness, which apparently didn't care what time of day it was, had been threatening to make an appearance for the last hour. "Okay," she agreed, "but you come back. No hero missions, no confronting suspects alone. You get supplies and come back." "I promise." Adrian kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. There's a gun in the nightstand if you need it. I know how to shoot." At his surprised look, she added, "My father taught me, before he died. He was a cop. Thought his daughter should know how to protect herself." Another piece of information he hadn't known. Another reminder of how little they actually knew each other, despite 2 years of marriage. "I keep underestimating you," Adrian said. "Stop doing that." "I'm trying." He headed for the door, then paused. "Isabella? Thank you. For not running when you had the chance, for staying, for being here." "Where else would I be?" "Anywhere but in the middle of a gang war." His smile was sad. "You deserve better than this." "Maybe, but this is what I have. So let's make it work." After Adrian left, the silence in the cabin felt oppressive. Isabella locked the door like he'd asked, then checked the windows, the back door, satisfying herself that everything was secure. The gun in the nightstand was a Glock, well-maintained and loaded. She checked the chamber out of habit, then set it on the bedside table within easy reach. Her father would have been proud, or horrified, probably both. She tried to rest, but her mind wouldn't stop spinning. 3 suspects, 72 hours. A stolen shipment worth $40 million and 2 criminal empires ready to go to war over it. And somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, a baby growing inside her who deserved better than parents running for their lives. Isabella's hand went to her stomach, a gesture that was becoming automatic. "I'm going to keep you safe," she whispered, "whatever it takes. Your father and I, we're going to figure this out." The baby couldn't hear her, couldn't respond. But saying the words out loud made them feel more real, more possible. She must have dozed off because the sound of the car returning jolted her awake. Isabella's hand went immediately to the gun, her heart racing. She checked the window carefully, staying back from the glass. Adrian's Honda. Adrian behind the wheel. Alone. She unlocked the door as he approached, loaded down with shopping bags. Relief flooded through her at seeing him safe, back like he'd promised. "You look like you robbed an electronics store," Isabella said, helping him carry bags inside. "Basically did. Paid cash at 3 different stores, wore a hat and glasses, avoided cameras." Adrian started unpacking. Burner phones, a laptop, charging cables, portable battery packs. "Also got real food. Figured you're probably sick of protein bars." He'd bought fresh bread, cheese, fruit. Simple things that felt like luxury after a day of gas station crackers. Isabella felt tears prick her eyes at the thoughtfulness. "Hormones," she explained when Adrian looked alarmed. "Pregnancy makes you cry over groceries." "Good to know." But he pulled her close anyway, letting her hide her face against his chest until she got herself under control. They ate a simple dinner, bread and cheese and apples, while Adrian set up the laptop and phones. He'd also bought a printer, which seemed excessive until Isabella watched him start printing photos. "What are those?" she asked, coming to look over his shoulder. "Background on our 3 suspects. Everything I've compiled over the years, associations, known contacts, financial records I definitely obtained legally." His voice was dry. "I want you to understand who we're dealing with." The first file was Vincent Caruso. Isabella studied the photos. A man in his 40s, handsome in a rough way, with dark hair going gray at the temples. He looked competent, trustworthy, which meant nothing in this world. Vincent came up with me, Adrian explained. We were soldiers together, back when my father was still running things. He's loyal, smart, and completely ruthless when he needs to be. But he's also ambitious, always has been. Has he ever tried to move against you before? Not that I know of, but in this business, the smart ones wait for the perfect opportunity. Adrian pulled up financial records. His cousin married Alexei Volkov 3 years ago. It was supposed to be a peace gesture, connecting our organizations, but it also gave Vincent a direct line into their family. Access and opportunity. Exactly. The second file was Nikolai Volkov, younger than Isabella expected, mid-30s with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. Every photo showed him standing slightly behind his older brother Dmitry, always in the shadow. Dmitry is the current head of the Volkov family, Adrian said, but Nikolai has been pushing for expansion, more aggressive tactics. They've been at odds for years. If Dmitry goes to war with me and loses, Nikolai inherits everything. And if Dmitry wins, then Nikolai gets to be second in command of a more powerful organization. Either way, he benefits from conflict. The third file made Adrian's jaw tighten. Elena Marchetti, beautiful, with dark hair and darker eyes, photographed at various events on Adrian's arm, before Isabella, before everything changed. Tell me about her, Isabella said, keeping her voice neutral. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Elena is brilliant. She sees patterns others miss, connections others don't make. She turned port logistics into an art form. Nothing moves through without her knowing about it. We grew up in the same neighborhood, both trying to survive families that were more liability than support. We understood each other. And you were engaged. For about 6 months. I was 28, thought maybe I could have a normal life. Someone to come home to, someone who understood the business. He shook his head. But I couldn't give her what she needed. The emotional availability, the vulnerability. I was too damaged, too closed off. What happened? She ended it, said she loved me but couldn't be with someone who wouldn't let her in. She was right. Adrian's hand found Isabella's. I didn't know how to be in a real relationship then, didn't understand what partnership actually meant. And now? Now I'm learning. From you. Because of you. He met her eyes. Elena moved on. Has a boyfriend, last I heard. Some banker who doesn't live this life. But she stayed in the organization, stayed friends with me, never showed any resentment. Or she hid it well. That's what worries me. If anyone could hide their real intentions, it's Elena. She's that good. Isabella studied the photos, the financial records, the web of connections Adrian had mapped out. 3 people. 3 possible traitors. And somewhere in this information was the answer that could save their lives or end them. We start tomorrow, Adrian said, closing the files. Make the contacts, set the trap, see who takes the bait. And if more than one of them is involved, then we have bigger problems than I thought. He pulled Isabella close, his chin resting on top of her head. But we'll handle it, together. That night, they shared the small bed again, and this time there was no hesitation. Adrian pulled Isabella against him like she belonged there, like they'd been sleeping intertwined for years instead of maintaining careful distance. She felt his heartbeat against her back, steady and strong, and let it anchor her. I'm scared, she admitted into the darkness. Me too. The honesty of it, Adrian Vale admitting fear, should have terrified her more. Instead, it felt like trust, like partnership. What are we going to do if this doesn't work? Isabella asked. If we can't find the traitor in time? We run, take whatever cash I have hidden, fake passports I've been maintaining for years, and disappear. New names, new lives. Start over somewhere the Volkovs can't reach. You'd give up your empire? In a heartbeat, if it meant keeping you and our child safe. Adrian's hand splayed across her stomach. I built it once. I can build it again, but I can't replace you. Isabella turned in his arms to face him, needing to see his eyes in the moonlight filtering through the windows. I don't want you to give up everything you've built. I want us to fight for it. Fight for the life we could have here. even knowing what it costs, what it might always cost. Even then, she kissed him softly, tasting possibility and fear and desperate hope. Because I've been living half a life for 2 years, Adrian, playing at being your wife without actually being your partner. I don't want to do that anymore. I want the real thing, danger and all. Adrian kissed her back, deeper this time, and Isabella felt heat flood through her despite the fear, despite the countdown ticking in both their minds. His hands were gentle on her body, reverent almost, like she was something precious instead of just protected. I don't deserve you, he murmured against her lips. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They made love slowly, carefully, Adrian treating her like she might break even as she insisted she wouldn't. It was different from the 3 clinical times before. Those had been obligation, fulfillment of marital duties neither of them particularly wanted. This was connection, partnership, a promise made in touches instead of words. Afterward, lying tangled together with sweat cooling on their skin, Isabella felt something shift inside her. Not the baby, too early for that, but something deeper, a certainty that hadn't been there before. She was all in. Whatever came next, whoever was trying to destroy them, she was committed to this, to Adrian, to their child, to the dangerous life they were building together. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "That I love you." The words slipped out before she could stop them, honest and terrifying. "I didn't mean to, didn't plan to, but I do." Adrian went still. For a moment, Isabella regretted saying it, too much too soon, pushing him past what he could handle. Then his arms tightened around her almost painfully. "Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you, Adrian Vale. Complicated past, dangerous present, uncertain future and all." He buried his face in her hair, and she felt his shoulders shake. It took her a moment to realize he was crying, silent tears that he probably hadn't shed in years. "I don't know how to do this," he said hoarsely. "Don't know how to be loved without destroying it." "Then we'll learn together." Isabella held him tighter. "That's what partnership means. We figure it out as we go." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other like armor, 2 damaged people trying to build something whole from broken pieces. Morning came too soon, bringing with it reality and deadlines and the impossible task ahead. Adrian was already up when Isabella woke, back at the laptop, the burner phones lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. "Coffee's ready," he said without looking up. "Decaf, and I made toast." Domestic Adrian was strange and wonderful. Isabella poured coffee, grabbed toast, and settled beside him at the small table. "What's the plan?" she asked. "I call Vincent first. Tell him I'm at the property upstate, the one near the lake. Ask him to check on something for me. Give him a reason to send people there. Then, email to Nikolai. Use an account he knows is mine, but that's been dormant for months. Tell him I have information about the shipment. Want to meet. Give him the address of the property in Connecticut." "And Elena?" Adrian's expression tightened. "I sent a courier to her house. Handwritten note, no electronics. Tell her I need help. I'm scared. I'm at the mountain cabin, the one in Vermont, not this one. See if she responds." "Why the different methods?" "Because I need to see how each one reacts. Vincent thinks in terms of tactical advantage. He'll send a team to confirm before acting. Nikolai is impulsive. He'll move fast, probably personally. Elena is careful. She'll verify everything before making a move." Isabella nodded, impressed by how well he knew them. "And we watch all 3 locations through your cameras." "Exactly. Whoever shows up where is our traitor." "What if they all show up somewhere?" "Then we have a conspiracy, and we're in even deeper trouble than I thought." Adrian picked up the first burner phone. "But right now I'm betting on one bad apple. It's cleaner that way." He made the call to Vincent, his voice perfectly calibrated, concerned but not panicked, needing help but not desperate. Isabella listened to him lie smoothly, painting a picture of a boss checking on properties while lying low, asking his second-in-command to verify security at the upstate location. Vincent's voice came through tinny but clear. "You sure you're okay, boss? You sound off. Just dealing with some unexpected complications, family stuff. You know how it is." Sure. I'll send Tony and Marco to check the lake house. They're good, discreet. You need anything else?" Just your loyalty, Vincent. Same as always. A pause, loaded with meaning. You've always had that, Adrian. Always. The call ended. Adrian immediately pulled up the security feed for the lake house on the laptop. Split screen showed 4 different camera angles: front entrance, back door, perimeter, and interior. Now we wait, he said. Next was the email to Nikolai. Adrian crafted it carefully using language that would appeal to the younger Volkov's ambition. Information about the shipment, proof of who really took it, a meeting to discuss terms. Will he believe you want to negotiate? Isabella asked. He'll believe I want to survive. That's all the motivation I need. Adrian hit send, then pulled up the Connecticut property feeds. The courier to Elena's house was trickier. Adrian wrote the note by hand, his penmanship surprisingly elegant. Isabella read over his shoulder, personal, almost vulnerable, asking for help from an old friend, saying he was scared, that Isabella was in danger, that he needed someone he could trust. It felt too real, too close to the truth. You think she'll come? Isabella asked. If she still cares at all, yes. If she's the traitor, definitely. It's the perfect opportunity to finish this. Adrian sealed the note in an envelope, addressed it in that same careful script. I'll drive it into town, hand it to the courier service that handles our sensitive deliveries. It'll be at her house in an hour. While Adrian was gone, Isabella monitored the feeds. The lake house showed nothing but trees and water. Connecticut property was empty, no movement anywhere. She found herself studying Elena's photo again, trying to understand what Adrian had seen in her. Beauty, obviously. Intelligence, clearly. But there was something else in the woman's eyes, a sharpness, a calculation. Like she was always 3 steps ahead. A woman like that could absolutely orchestrate a theft and frame Adrian for it. But would she? After 15 years of friendship, after loving him once? Isabella touched her stomach, wondering what she would do for this baby, how far she would go to protect her child, and realized with startling clarity that she would burn the world down if she had to. Maybe Elena would too. Maybe that's what they were dealing with, not ambition, but protection. Someone trying to secure their own future by destroying Adrian's. Adrian returned an hour later, tense and wired. Courier confirmed delivery. Elena's home, she signed for it herself. Now we wait for all 3. Now we wait. The first movement came 2 hours later. The lake house, 4 men emerging from the tree line, armed and cautious. Isabella watched them approach the building, saw them split up to cover all exits before one picked the lock, and they disappeared inside. That's Vincent's team, Adrian confirmed, his voice tight. Tony and Marco, like he said, plus 2 others I recognize. Standard security suite protocol. They watched the men search the empty house, methodical and professional. After 20 minutes, they left, one of them on the phone the entire drive away. Reporting back to Vincent that you're not there, Isabella said, and that I lied about my location. Adrian's expression was grim, which means Vincent now knows I'm testing him. The question is, does he know why? An hour passed, then 2. The Connecticut feed showed nothing. No one approaching, no cars on the road. Maybe Nikolai didn't take the bait, Isabella said. Or maybe he's being careful. He's impulsive, but he's not stupid. But as the 3rd hour ticked over with no movement, Adrian's confidence started to crack. This should have worked. One of them should have responded by now. We still have Elena. As if summoned by her name, movement appeared on the Vermont feed. A single car, expensive and sleek, pulling up to the cabin that wasn't this cabin. A woman got out. Dark hair, designer coat, moving with purpose. Elena Marchetti. Isabella felt her stomach drop as she watched the woman approach the cabin, saw her try the door, peer through windows. Elena pulled out her phone, made a call, waited, then left a note wedged in the door and returned to her car. But she didn't leave. She sat in the driver's seat watching the cabin, clearly waiting for Adrian to appear. She came alone, Adrian said, his voice hollow. No backup, no weapons I can see. She actually came to help. Or to verify you're not there before calling in reinforcements. They watched Elena wait for another 30 minutes before finally starting her car and driving away. The note fluttered against the door, too far from any camera to read. I need to get that note, Adrian said, already standing. It's a 3-hour drive, but I need to know what she wrote. Adrian, wait. But a notification on the laptop stopped them both. The Connecticut feed, activity. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Black SUVs, at least 5 of them. Men pouring out before the cars fully stopped, heavily armed, moving with military precision. That's not Nikolai's style, Adrian said, his face going white. That's a hit squad. They watched in horror as the men surrounded the property, covering every exit. One of them set up what looked like a rocket launcher. They're going to destroy it, Isabella whispered. They think we're inside. Get away from the window, Adrian ordered, pulling her back from the laptop. If they're hitting Connecticut, they might... Explosion. Not from the laptop speakers. From outside. Close. Too close. The cabin shook. Windows rattled. Birds erupted from trees in a panicked chorus. They found us, Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. That wasn't Connecticut. That was a warning. They're here. Adrian moved with the speed of someone who'd trained for this exact scenario. He slammed the laptop shut, grabbed the gun from the nightstand, and shoved another into Isabella's hands. This one's smaller, easier to handle. The panic room, he said, already pulling her toward the bedroom. There's a tunnel that leads half a mile into the forest. We can... Another explosion, closer this time. The cabin's windows shattered inward, glass raining down like deadly snow. Adrian threw himself over Isabella, shielding her body with his as debris peppered his back. Move! He hauled her upright, blood trickling from a cut on his temple. Now, Isabella! They ran. Adrian pulled back the rug in the bedroom closet, revealing a trap door Isabella had never noticed. Of course there was a trap door. Of course Adrian had an escape route, even in his most secret hideaway. Paranoia really did pay off. The ladder descended into darkness. Adrian went first, his gun drawn, checking the tunnel before helping Isabella down. The moment her feet hit concrete, he was pulling the trapdoor closed above them, engaging locks that slid into place with heavy metallic thuds. This way. Adrian's voice was eerily calm, a soldier operating on training and instinct. He flicked on a flashlight attached to his keychain, illuminating a narrow concrete tunnel that stretched ahead into nothing. Stay close. Don't stop for anything. Isabella's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break her ribs. Above them, she could hear footsteps, heavy boots on the cabin's wooden floors. Men's voices, speaking Russian. They were inside already, searching room by room. Adrian pulled her forward, moving quickly through the tunnel. The walls were close, oppressive, and Isabella fought the urge to panic. She was pregnant, running for her life through an underground passage while armed mercenaries destroyed the cabin above. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening, but it was, and she had to survive it. Behind them, an explosion rocked the tunnel, the trap door. They'd blown it open. Shouts echoed down the passage, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness behind them. Run! Adrian shoved Isabella ahead of him, positioning himself between her and their pursuers. Don't look back, just run! Isabella ran. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she ran like her life depended on it, because it did. The tunnel seemed endless, stretching on forever, her shadow dancing on the walls from Adrian's flashlight, bouncing with each stride. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets ricocheted off concrete, sparks flying. Adrian returned fire without slowing, his shots controlled and precise. A scream echoed through the tunnel. He'd hit someone. Almost there, Adrian gasped. 50 more feet. The tunnel ended abruptly at a metal ladder leading up. Adrian practically threw Isabella at it. Climb, I'll cover you. Isabella grabbed the rungs and climbed, her arms shaking with adrenaline and exhaustion. Above, she could see a sliver of daylight through a hatch. She pushed against it with all her strength, and it gave way, swinging open to reveal forest and sky and blessed freedom. She hauled herself out, collapsing on pine needles and dirt. Adrian emerged seconds later, slamming the hatch closed and dragging a fallen tree branch over it. Camouflage or just desperation, Isabella couldn't tell. Can you run? He asked, helping her to her feet. I don't have a choice. That's my girl. They ran through the forest, branches whipping at their faces, roots trying to trip them. Behind them, Isabella heard the hatch open, heard men emerging into the daylight, heard orders shouted in Russian and English both. Adrian pulled her behind a massive oak, pressing her against the bark while he checked their surroundings. His face was grim, blood from the temple wound running down his cheek, but his hands were steady on the gun, his eyes sharp, and calculating. "There's a road about a quarter-mile east," he said quietly. "If we can reach it, I have a car stashed there. Old pickup truck, always gassed up, keys under the wheel well." "You have escape vehicles everywhere, don't you?" "Told you. Paranoia." He risked a glance around the tree, then pulled back quickly. "4 of them that I can see. Maybe more. They're spreading out, trying to flank us." "What do we do?" Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and Isabella saw something like agony in his eyes. "I need you to promise me something." "Adrian, promise me." His voice was fierce. "If something happens to me, if I go down, you run. You get to that truck and you drive. Don't stop. Don't look back. There's a safe deposit box in Boston, key taped under the truck's dashboard. Inside is everything you need: cash, passports, contacts who can help you disappear. I'm not leaving you. You have to, for our baby. Promise me, Isabella." Tears burned her eyes, but she nodded. "I promise." "Good." He kissed her hard and fast, then pulled away. "Now stay low and follow me. We're going to move fast and quiet. Can you do that?" "Yes." They moved through the forest like ghosts, Adrian's training evident in every step. He knew how to move silently, how to use cover, how to read the terrain for advantages. Isabella did her best to match him, ignoring the screaming protest of her muscles, the morning sickness threatening to make an appearance at the worst possible time. They were maybe 100 yards from the road when Adrian stopped abruptly. Isabella nearly ran into him. Ahead, blocking their path, stood a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing tactical gear. He held a rifle casually, like he'd been waiting for them. "Hello, Adrian," the man said in accented English. Russian, but educated. "It's been a long time." Adrian's entire body went rigid. "Alexei, you remember me. I'm flattered." Hard to forget the man who married Vincent's cousin. Adrian's voice was cold, controlled. "What are you doing here, Alexei? This is Volkov business, not yours." "Isn't it?" Alexei smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. "See, that's the beautiful thing about marrying into a family. Their business becomes your business, and when $40 million goes missing, everyone takes notice." "I didn't take the shipment." "I know." Alexei's smile widened. "I did." The confession hung in the air, stunning in its simplicity. Isabella felt Adrian's shock even as he kept his gun trained on Alexei's chest. "Why?" Adrian asked. "Why not? You and the Volkovs have been dancing around each other for years, both too cautious to make a real move. Someone needed to force the issue. Start the war. Let you destroy each other so the rest of us could pick up the pieces." Alexei shrugged. "Turns out stealing a shipment and framing you was easier than I expected. Everyone was so ready to believe you'd done it." "Vincent?" Adrian's voice cracked slightly on the name. "Is he part of this?" "Vincent is a loyal soldier who does what he's told. He thinks he's protecting you, running security checks, following up on threats. He has no idea his cousin's husband has been orchestrating everything." Alexei's expression turned mocking. "That's the beauty of it. I used your own people against you, and they never even knew." Isabella watched Adrian process this, saw the betrayal cutting deeper than any bullet could. Vincent wasn't the traitor. He was a pawn. They all were. "And Elena?" Isabella found her voice. "The note she left at the Vermont cabin?" Alexei's eyes shifted to her, noticing her for the first time. "Ah, the pregnant wife. Congratulations, by the way. A child is such a blessing." The casual threat in his tone made Isabella's blood run cold. "Elena knows nothing," Alexei continued. "She came because Adrian asked for help, because she still cares about him, even after he broke her heart. Quite touching, really. Almost made me feel guilty for using her name in some of my communications with the Volkovs." "You framed her too," Adrian said slowly. "Made it look like she was feeding information to both sides. She has access to everything. It was perfect. Between her and you, the Volkovs had plenty of suspects." Alexei raised his rifle slightly. "But now it's time to end this. You've been far too much trouble, Adrian, and the Volkovs are getting impatient for blood." "They wanted me to find the shipment," Isabella said, pieces clicking into place. That's why they gave us 72 hours. They expected you to deliver me, didn't they? The pregnant wife of their enemy, gift-wrapped as proof of your loyalty. Alexei's smile confirmed it. Smart girl. Nikolai especially wanted you. He has a flair for the dramatic. Killing Adrian's wife and unborn child would have been quite the statement. But you two proved harder to pin down than expected. Had to track you through the burner phones, trace the car, follow the courier. Took some time. The courier, Adrian breathed. You had someone watching Elena's house. I have people watching everything. That's how you win this game. Information, patience, and knowing when to strike. Alexei's finger moved to the trigger. And now I strike. Goodbye, Adrian. It's been a pleasure destroying you. Everything happened at once. Adrian shoved Isabella aside, throwing her to the ground as Alexei fired. The bullet caught Adrian in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fired back, his shot going wide. Isabella's hands found her gun. She'd never shot at a person before, had only ever practiced on paper targets with her father. But watching Adrian go down, watching Alexei chamber another round, something primal took over. She fired, once, twice, 3 times. The first 2 shots missed, the third caught Alexei in the thigh. He went down with a scream, his rifle falling from his hands. Isabella scrambled to her feet, her gun still trained on him, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it. Adrian pulled himself upright, his left arm hanging useless, blood soaking his shirt, but he kept his gun steady on Alexei. You just made a big mistake, Alexei gasped, clutching his leg. I have men everywhere. You can't run far enough, can't hide well enough. Maybe not. Adrian's voice was cold as winter. But I can make a phone call. He pulled out one of the burner phones with his good hand, never taking his eyes off Alexei. Dialed a number from memory. Dmitri? Adrian said when someone answered. This is Adrian Vale. I know who stole your shipment, and I can prove it. But I need a favor first. Send men to my coordinates. I'm holding the thief right now, and I think you'll want to handle this personally. Isabella couldn't hear the response, but she saw Adrian's grim smile. He's family to you, Adrian continued. Your brother-in-law, Alexei Volkov. He's been playing us both. Stole 40 million from you, framed me for it, and tried to start a war to cover his tracks. Yes, I have proof. No, I'm not asking for anything except safe passage while you clean up your own mess. A pause. Then Adrian recited coordinates, their exact location. 20 minutes? We'll be here. He hung up, then looked at Isabella. Can you keep a gun on him while I tie him up? Isabella nodded, her hand still shaking, but her aim steady enough. She watched Adrian use torn pieces of Alexei's own shirt to bind his hands behind his back, watched him check the leg wound, through and through, painful, but not fatal. You're dead, Alexei hissed. Both of you. Dmitri won't let you walk away from this. Maybe, but at least I'll die with the truth out there. Adrian finished securing the knots, then sat down heavily against a tree, his face pale from blood loss. Isabella, there's a first aid kit in my jacket pocket. Can you get it? She found the small kit, helped Adrian pack the shoulder wound with gauze. The bullet had gone through clean, lucky given the circumstances, but he was losing blood fast, his skin clammy and cold. Stay with me, Isabella said, pressing harder on the wound. Adrian, stay awake. I'm okay, just tired. His eyes were unfocused. Did I ever tell you you're beautiful when you're threatening armed mercenaries? You're in shock. Probably, but it's still true. He caught her hand, squeezed weakly. Thank you. For saving my life, for shooting him, for being exactly who you are. Save the gratitude for when we're safe. But tears ran down Isabella's face anyway, mixing with dirt and blood and fear. They waited. Alexei alternated between threats and bargaining, trying to convince them to let him go, promising money and safety and lies. Isabella ignored him, focused on keeping pressure on Adrian's wound, on keeping him conscious. After what felt like hours but was probably only 15 minutes, they heard vehicles. Multiple vehicles, moving fast through the forest with no regard for stealth. Black SUVs emerged from the trees. Men poured out, hard-faced Russians in expensive suits, carrying guns that probably cost more than most people's cars. And from the lead vehicle, a man who could only be Dmitri Volkov. He was older than his brother Nikolai, probably mid-50s, with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen everything twice and been unimpressed both times. He walked directly to where they waited, his men fanning out in a perimeter. "Adrian Vale," Dmitri said, his English barely accented. "You look terrible." "You should see the other guy." Adrian nodded toward Alexei. "He's the one who stole your shipment, framed me for it, tried to start a war between our organizations so he could take over after we destroyed each other." Dmitri looked at Alexei, and Isabella saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. "My brother-in-law, my wife's brother, part of my family." "I'm sorry," Adrian said, and sounded like he meant it. "Don't be. I knew someone in my organization was making moves. Nikolai suspected you, wanted immediate war. I preferred to wait, to see how things developed." Dmitri crouched beside Alexei, studying him like a bug under glass. "But my own brother-in-law. That's disappointing." "Dmitri, please," Alexei started. "Quiet." The word was soft but carried absolute authority. Alexei fell silent immediately. Dmitri stood, turned back to Adrian. "You said you have proof?" "Laptop in the cabin tunnel. Financial records showing Alexei moving the shipment through his own contacts, selling it piece by piece over 3 months. Communications between him and the team that hit my men at the club. Everything you need to confirm what he's already admitted." "He admitted it?" "Gloated about it, actually. The whole plan. Very movie villain of him." Adrian's words were starting to slur slightly. "Proof enough?" Dmitri nodded slowly, then looked at his men. "Get the laptop. Verify everything he says. If it's true..." He glanced at Alexei. "We'll have a family discussion about consequences." The way he said it made Isabella's blood run cold. She'd heard about Russian mob justice, about what happened to traitors. It wouldn't be quick or merciful. "And us?" Adrian asked. "Safe passage, like we agreed?" "I'm a man of my word," Dmitri gestured to one of his men. "Get a medic for Mr. Vale. He's bleeding all over my forest." His eyes shifted to Isabella, taking in her protective stance, the gun still in her hands. "And have someone bring water for Mrs. Vale. A woman in her condition shouldn't have to stand while negotiations are conducted." The fact that he knew she was pregnant shouldn't have surprised her. These men knew everything. A medic appeared within minutes, working efficiently on Adrian's shoulder while Dmitri's men retrieved the laptop and searched the destroyed cabin. Isabella accepted the bottle of water someone handed her, drinking gratefully even as she kept watch over everything. Dmitri's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then smiled grimly. "My men confirm your evidence. Everything exactly as you said. Alexei has been very busy these past months." "What will you do with him?" Isabella asked before she could stop herself. Dmitri's eyes met hers, and she saw centuries of Russian pragmatism looking back. "That's family business, Mrs. Vale. You don't want to know the details. Will this end it? The war between you and Adrian? There was never supposed to be a war. Alexei manufactured one for his own ambition." Dmitri looked at Adrian, who was sitting upright now, his shoulder bandaged and his color slightly better. "You and I have always operated with mutual professional respect, yes?" "Yes," Adrian agreed. "Then I see no reason to change that. In fact, perhaps this is an opportunity. Your organization and mine working together occasionally, sharing information, preventing future misunderstandings." Adrian nodded slowly. "I'd consider that, under the right terms. We'll negotiate when you're not bleeding." Dmitri gestured to his men. "Take Alexei to the car. Mrs. Vale, Mr. Vale, you're free to go. I'll leave one of my vehicles for you. Adrian's truck is a half-mile from here, but I doubt he can walk that far right now." "Thank you," Isabella said, meaning it. "Don't thank me yet. This isn't mercy. It's business." But Dmitri's expression softened slightly. "Though I will say, you have spirit. Adrian chose well when he married you." He walked away then, his men dragging Alexei, who'd gone silent and pale, understanding exactly what awaited him, toward the SUVs. Within minutes, the forest was quiet again, except for Isabella, Adrian, and one driver waiting patiently by a black sedan. "Can you walk?" Isabella asked Adrian. "With help." He leaned on her heavily as they made their way to the car, every step obviously painful. But he was alive. They were both alive. The driver took them back to the cabin, or what was left of it. The structure was mostly destroyed, walls blown out, roof collapsed. But the tunnel entrance was still accessible and Adrian's laptop was gone, taken by Dimitri's men for evidence. Everything I owned, Adrian said quietly, staring at the destruction. All my escape plans, all my safe houses. They found them all. Not all. Isabella squeezed his hand. You still have the truck, still have the safe deposit box in Boston. We can start over. Can we? He looked at her, and she saw the exhaustion in every line of his face. I almost got you killed, Isabella. Almost got our baby killed. Maybe you should take that truck and drive away from me. Take the money in Boston and disappear. Live a life that doesn't involve running through forests and being hunted by mercenaries. No. Isabella, no, she repeated firmly. I told you I love you. I meant it. I'm not running. Not from this, not from you. We're in this together, remember? For better or worse. This is definitely worse. Then we survive it together. We rebuild. We learn from this. She cupped his face in her hands, making him look at her. You said you'd figure out how to be loved without destroying it. This is how... You let me stand beside you. Let me fight with you. Let me be your partner instead of just your protected wife. Adrian's eyes filled with tears he'd probably rather die than shed. I don't deserve you. Stop saying that. You're stuck with me. Deal with it. He laughed, weak but genuine, and pulled her close with his good arm. They stood like that in the ruins of the cabin, holding each other while smoke still rose from the destroyed building. The driver cleared his throat politely. Mr. Vale, we should go. The cabin might have structural issues. Right. Adrian pulled away reluctantly. Where do you want to go, Isabella? You pick. Anywhere in the world. She thought about it. Boston, where the safe deposit box waited. Europe, where they could disappear. South America, where Adrian had mentioned contacts once. But there was only one answer that made sense. Home, she said. I want to go home. To the penthouse. To our actual life. You're sure? After everything? I'm sure. Because running didn't work. Hiding didn't work. So we go back. We face whatever comes next head on. And we do it together. Adrian looked at her like she'd performed a miracle. Together, he repeated. They drove south as the sun set, Isabella's hand in Adrian's the entire way. They didn't talk much, both too exhausted, too overwhelmed by everything that had happened. But the silence was comfortable now, filled with understanding instead of distance. When they finally reached the city, the penthouse rising into the night sky like a monument to the life they'd almost lost, Isabella felt something settle in her chest. This was home. Not because it was beautiful or expensive or safe, but because it was theirs, where they'd learn to be married, where they'd raise their child, where they'd build something real from the wreckage of everything they'd been before. Marcus met them in the lobby, his face showing rare emotion at seeing them alive. Sir, ma'am, we've been trying to reach you for hours. Long story, Adrian said. I need a doctor, absolute discretion, and a very large glass of whiskey, in that order. Already arranged the doctor. He's waiting upstairs. Marcus's eyes went to Isabella. Mrs. Vale, there's someone here to see you. She's been waiting since this morning. Says it's urgent. Isabella frowned. Who? Elena Marchetti. Adrian tensed, his hand going instinctively toward where his gun usually sat, but Isabella put a hand on his arm. Let me talk to her, she said. Alone. You get your shoulder looked at. Isabella, trust me, she said. Please. After a long moment, Adrian nodded. She's in the study. Marcus will be right outside the door. Elena Marchetti was pacing when Isabella entered, her designer coat draped over a chair, her hair escaping from its usual perfect arrangement. She looked exhausted and worried and very, very human. Thank God, Elena breathed when she saw Isabella. I've been terrified. Adrian sent that note, asked for help, and then nothing. No answer at the cabin, no response to my messages. I thought... She stopped, taking in Isabella's disheveled appearance, the dirt and blood still staining her clothes. What happened? Someone tried to kill us, Isabella said simply. We survived. Barely. Elena's face went pale. Who? Was it the Volkovs? I heard about the threats, about the deadline. How did you hear about that? I have sources everywhere. It's my job to know what's moving through the ports, who's making threats, where tensions are rising. Elena sat down heavily. Adrian and I might not be together anymore, but I still care about him, about his safety. When I got his note, when he said he was scared, you came to help. Of course I came to help. He's family, even if we're not married, even if he chose someone else. Elena's eyes met Isabella's, and there was no jealousy there, just concern and something that might have been relief. Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay. He will be. He was shot, but the doctor's with him now. It went through clean. Jesus. Elena put her head in her hands. This is my fault. I should have seen this coming, should have noticed the irregularities in shipments, the communications that didn't quite make sense. I'm supposed to see the patterns. You couldn't have known, Isabella said, sitting across from her. None of us did. Alexei played everyone perfectly. Alexei Volkov? Elena's head snapped up. Vincent's cousin-in-law? He was behind this? All of it. The stolen shipment, the frame job, the attacks. He confessed everything before Dmitry Volkov took him for family discussion. Elena's expression turned grim. She knew what that meant. And Adrian? Where does he stand with the Volkovs now? Negotiating a truce, maybe an alliance. It's complicated. It always is. Elena studied Isabella for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone fragile? Someone who needed protecting from Adrian's world? Someone who would break under pressure? Elena smiled slightly. But you're none of those things, are you? I'm learning not to be. Good. Because Adrian needs someone strong, someone who can stand beside him instead of behind him, someone who can call him on his bullshit and make him be better than his worst instincts. Elena stood, gathering her coat. I loved him once. Part of me probably always will. But I couldn't be that person for him. I'm glad he found someone who can. Isabella felt unexpected warmth toward this woman who could have been an enemy, but chose to be an ally instead. Thank you for coming when he asked, for caring even after everything. That's what family does. Elena headed for the door, then paused. Take care of him, Isabella, and make him take care of you. Partnership goes both ways. I will. After Elena left, Isabella made her way to the bedroom. Adrian was sitting on the edge of the bed, his shoulder freshly bandaged, his shirt off, looking utterly exhausted. The doctor was packing up his supplies. No permanent damage, the doctor said quietly to Isabella. Keep the wound clean. Watch for infection. He needs rest, but I suspect I'm wasting my breath on that advice. I'll make sure he rests, Isabella promised. After the doctor left, she sat beside Adrian, taking his hand. Elena came to help. She was genuinely worried about you. I know. I never doubted her loyalty, just her potential involvement. Adrian squeezed her fingers. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I'm trying to be better. We both are. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the enormity of the day finally catching up to them. We need to talk, Adrian said finally. About everything. About what happens next. About how we're going to raise a child in this world. Tomorrow, Isabella said. Tonight we rest. Tomorrow, we figure out the rest of our lives. Deal. They lay down together, careful of Adrian's shoulder, their bodies fitting together like they'd been designed for this. Isabella listened to his heartbeat, steady and strong, and felt their baby growing safely inside her despite everything. They'd survived, they'd fought together, and somehow, against all odds, they'd come out the other side stronger. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new complications. But tonight, they were home. They were together. They were alive. And that was enough. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through the penthouse windows with aggressive cheerfulness. Isabella woke to find Adrian already awake beside her, staring at the ceiling with the kind of expression that meant his mind had been working overtime for hours. How long have you been up? She asked, her voice still rough with sleep. Since about 4. Couldn't stop thinking. He turned to look at her, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes despite a full night's rest. We need to talk about the future, Isabella. Real talk, no avoiding the hard questions. She nodded, pushing herself upright carefully. The baby was making its presence known with a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with hormones. Give me 10 minutes to not feel like I'm going to vomit, and then we'll talk. By the time she emerged from the bathroom, having showered and changed into comfortable clothes that actually belonged to her instead of borrowed shirts, Adrian had coffee waiting. Real coffee for him, herbal tea for her. The domesticity of it still felt strange and wonderful. They settled on the couch, the same couch where she'd stood with a packed suitcase weeks ago, ready to leave. The same couch where Adrian had offered her freedom and she'd chosen to stay. Everything had changed since then, and somehow nothing had. I've been thinking about what you said, Adrian began, cradling his coffee mug. About partnership. About including you instead of protecting you from everything. And I realized something. What? I don't know how to do that. I've spent 15 years building walls, keeping people at distance, controlling every variable. It's kept me alive, kept my organization running, kept my enemies afraid. He set down the mug, his good hand finding hers. But it's also kept me alone. And I don't want to be alone anymore. I don't want our child growing up with a father who's there, but not really there. Isabella squeezed his fingers. So what do you want? I want to try something different, something I've never done before. Adrian took a deep breath, like the words cost him something. I want to step back from day-to-day operations. Put Vincent in charge of most of the business. He's earned it, and after Alexei, he deserves to prove his loyalty wasn't misplaced. I keep oversight, make the big decisions, handle relationships with families like the Volkovs. But I'm not in the clubs every night, not personally managing every operation. Isabella stared at him. You're serious? Completely. I've built something that runs efficiently. I have people I trust, really trust, now that the snake has been cut out. I can delegate without losing control. He paused. I can be a husband, a father, a person who comes home at reasonable hours instead of dawn. What brought this on? Almost dying tends to clarify priorities. Adrian's smile was wry, but also watching you. The way you handled everything, the threats, the violence, Elena. You didn't fall apart. You didn't need me to fix everything. You were a partner, exactly like you said. And I realized that's what I want. Not someone to protect from the world, but someone to face the world with. Tears pricked Isabella's eyes, hormones making everything more intense. I want that too. But Adrian, you can't completely walk away from who you are. The business, the organization, it's part of you. I'm not asking you to give that up. I'm not giving it up. I'm reshaping it, making room for something else, for you, for our family. He pulled her close, careful of his injured shoulder. I talked to Vincent this morning, early, explained what happened, about Alexei using him. He was devastated, but also relieved. He thought he was going crazy, finding inconsistencies he couldn't explain. We're restructuring security protocols, bringing in people we both trust, absolutely. What about the Volkovs? Dmitry called an hour ago. Alexei didn't survive his family discussion, which wasn't a surprise. But Dmitry wants to move forward with an alliance. Profit sharing on certain ventures, joint security on the ports, unified front against outside threats. Adrian's expression was cautiously optimistic. It could work. We'd be stronger together than constantly watching each other for signs of war. You trust him? As much as I trust anyone in this business. But yes, I think Dmitry is pragmatic enough to see the benefits. And after Alexei, he knows betrayal can come from anywhere. Better to have strong allies than suspicious competitors. Isabella processed this, imagining a future where Adrian wasn't constantly at war, where their child could grow up with some semblance of safety. It wasn't a normal life, would never be normal, but it was better than what they'd been running from. I have conditions, she said. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Oh? If you're stepping back from operations, I want to be involved in the legitimate businesses, the restaurants, the real estate holdings, the investments. I have a degree in business management I've never used because you married me and made me a housewife. I want to put it to use. A slow smile spread across Adrian's face. You want to work. I want to contribute. To be a real partner, not just in our marriage, but in building something. I can't carry a gun or intimidate enemies, but I can analyze spreadsheets and negotiate contracts and help build legitimate revenue streams that don't involve looking over our shoulders. Done. We have a meeting next week with our accountants. You'll be there, full access to all the books, legal and otherwise. Adrian's smile widened. Though I have to warn you, our accounting is creative. I'd expect nothing less. Isabella felt excitement building, the first real hope she'd felt in days. What else needs to happen? We need to rebuild trust with our people. The attack, the betrayal, it shook everyone. Marcus has been running damage control, but people need to see us together, strong, united. Adrian paused. Which brings me to my next point. I want to renew our vows. Isabella's breath caught. What? The first time we got married for the wrong reasons. Protection, obligation, control. I want to do it again, but this time for the right reasons. Love, partnership, choice. He took both her hands in his. I want to stand in front of our people, our families, what's left of them, and promise to be your husband. Really your husband. Not your jailer or your protector, but your partner. Adrian, we don't need a ceremony to prove anything. I need it. I need to say the words out loud, mean them this time. I need everyone to understand that you're not just the boss's wife. You're my equal, my choice, the person I'm building a future with. His voice roughened with emotion. Please, let me do this right. How could she say no to that? To Adrian, asking instead of demanding, offering vulnerability instead of control. This was what she'd wanted all along, to be chosen, not trapped. Yes, she whispered. Yes, we'll renew our vows. Adrian pulled her into a kiss that tasted like coffee and promises and new beginnings. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isabella laughed. We have terrible timing, you know that? Planning a wedding while you're recovering from a gunshot wound and I'm dealing with morning sickness. When has anything about us been conventional? Fair point. They spent the rest of the morning planning, not just the ceremony but their entire future. Adrian wanted the vow renewal to happen quickly, within a month, before the baby started showing too much, while the resolution with the Volkovs was still fresh. Small, intimate, just the people who mattered. Vincent would be there, his loyalty proven through crisis. Elena, because she was family in all the ways that mattered. Dmitry Volkov, as a show of the new alliance. Marcus and the core security team who'd protected them through everything. A handful of others from both their organizations who'd earned the right to witness this new beginning. What about your family? Adrian asked. Your mother, other relatives? Isabella's expression tightened. My mother left when I was 12. I have an aunt in Oregon I haven't spoken to in 5 years. No siblings. My father was my only real family, and he's been gone for 8 years. I'm sorry. I should have asked before, should have known this about you. You're learning now. That's what matters. She leaned against him. What about your family? All gone. My parents, obviously. I had a sister once. She died when I was 19. Car accident, or at least that's what the official report said. I've always suspected my father's enemies, but I never found proof. Adrian's voice was distant, remembering. After that, I stopped thinking of blood as family. Made my own family with people I chose. Like Vincent. Like Vincent. Like Marcus. Like Elena, even after we ended the engagement. He looked at Isabella. Like you. And like our baby. We're making our own family, building it from scratch. Maybe that's better than inheriting broken legacies. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Adrian's shoulder healed faster than the doctor predicted. Stubbornness, apparently an effective medicine. He started delegating, teaching Vincent the intricacies of running day-to-day operations while maintaining oversight of the bigger picture. It wasn't a perfect transition. Adrian had control issues that didn't disappear overnight, but he tried. And when he started to slip back into old habits, Isabella called him on it. Their first real argument happened 2 weeks after they'd returned to the penthouse. Adrian had made a major decision about territory redistribution with the Volkovs without consulting her, and Isabella found out from Marcus instead of her husband. You said partnership, she'd confronted him in his office, her voice sharp with betrayal. You said you'd include me. This was business, Isabella, organization business. I didn't think. That's the problem. You didn't think. You defaulted back to making decisions alone, keeping me in the dark for my own protection, or whatever excuse you're using today. Adrian had the grace to look ashamed. You're right, I'm sorry. Old habits. Break them. Isabella hadn't softened. I'm serious, Adrian. If this is going to work, if we're going to be real partners, you can't revert to treating me like fragile china every time business gets complicated. I can handle it, but I can't handle being shut out. He'd promised to do better, and to his credit, he had. The next major decision, opening a new restaurant in partnership with one of Dimitri's ventures, Adrian had brought to her first, walked her through the details, asked her opinion. They'd negotiated terms together, Isabella's business degree finally getting use as she spotted loopholes and unfavorable clauses Adrian's street-smart instincts had missed. They were learning. Slowly, sometimes painfully, but learning. The vow renewal was planned for a Saturday evening in late spring, held at the penthouse because Adrian wanted Isabella comfortable and safe. They'd hired caterers who understood discretion, a photographer who'd worked with the family before, a string quartet that knew better than to ask questions about the guest list. The day arrived with perfect weather, sunlight turning the city gold, the penthouse filled with flowers Isabella had chosen herself. White roses and peonies, simple and elegant. She'd found a dress that worked with her growing bump, soft ivory silk that made her feel beautiful instead of just pregnant. Standing in the bedroom, looking at herself in the mirror, Isabella felt tears threaten. 6 months ago, she'd been planning her escape from this marriage. Now she was planning to recommit to it, and meaning every word this time. You look stunning, Elena said from the doorway. She'd arrived early, had helped with last-minute details, gracefully stepping into the role of friend instead of ex-fiancé. Adrian's going to lose his mind when he sees you. I'm showing. I look like I swallowed a basketball. You look like a woman about to marry the man she loves. That's all anyone's going to see. Elena came closer, adjusting Isabella's veil with gentle hands. I'm glad it's you, you know. Glad Adrian found someone who makes him better instead of just comfortable. You're good for him. Thank you for being here, for being supportive, for not hating me. Why would I hate you? You didn't steal him. I let him go because we weren't right for each other. But you are. Elena smiled. Besides, someone needs to keep that stubborn man in line. Might as well be someone who loves him enough to fight for him. The ceremony was small, intimate, held in the penthouse living room where Isabella and Adrian had fought and reconciled and learned to be married. Vincent stood as Adrian's best man, his expression proud and protective. Elena stood beside Isabella, the symbolism not lost on anyone. Old love supporting new love, past making peace with future. The officiant was a judge who'd known Adrian's father, who'd watched Adrian grow from angry teenager to powerful boss. He spoke briefly about second chances, about choosing love over fear, about building something lasting from imperfect foundations. Then Adrian and Isabella faced each other, and the world narrowed to just them. Adrian spoke first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Isabella, when I married you the first time, I did it for the wrong reasons. I wanted to protect you, to control the situation, to keep you safe in the only way I knew how. I treated our marriage like a business arrangement, and I treated you like a beautiful problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved. He took her hands, his grip warm and sure. I was wrong. About everything. You're not fragile. You're not a problem. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and you've made me want to be stronger too. Better, more honest, more human. His voice cracked slightly. You've given me a second chance at this marriage, at this life. You've given me hope that I can be more than what I was raised to be. And you're giving me a child, a family, a future I never thought I deserved. Tears ran down Isabella's face, and she didn't bother wiping them away. So today, I'm promising you this, Adrian continued. I will be your partner, not your protector. I will trust you with the truth, even when it's ugly. I will build a life with you, not for you. I will love you, not quietly, not carefully, but completely, with everything I am and everything I'm learning to be. He paused, his own eyes shining. I will be the husband you deserve and the father our child deserves. Or I'll die trying. Don't die trying, Isabella said through tears. Just keep trying. That's all I need. Her turn now. Isabella took a shaky breath, gathering her thoughts. Adrian, I married you the first time out of gratitude and obligation. You'd saved my life, and I thought I owed you. I thought marriage was the price of safety, and I paid it without understanding what I was agreeing to. She squeezed his hands. But somewhere in the past few months, something changed. I stopped seeing you as my jailer and started seeing you as my partner. I stopped being afraid of you and started being afraid for you. I stopped wanting to escape and started wanting to fight. For you, for us, for the family we're building. You've shown me what it means to be loved by someone who's learning how to love. Someone who makes mistakes but owns them. Someone who's trying to break cycles and build something better. Isabella's voice strengthened. You're not perfect, Adrian Vale. You're controlling and paranoid, and sometimes you make decisions that make me want to strangle you. But you're also brave and loyal, and you're trying so hard to be better than your history. So I'm promising you this, she continued. I will stand beside you, not behind you. I will call you on your bullshit when you slip back into old patterns. I will be your partner in every sense, in business, in parenting, in building the life we both want. She paused, her hand moving to her stomach. I will love you, not the man you were, not the man you think you should be, but the man you are. Flaws and all, danger and all, because you're mine, and I choose you. Every day, I choose you. Adrian pulled her into a kiss before the officiant could officially pronounce them married. Again. Isabella laughed against his lips, felt him smile, and thought this was what marriage should feel like. Not perfect, not safe, but real. The reception was everything a mob wedding should be. Good food, better wine, and an undercurrent of violence barely contained by expensive suits. But it was also warm, filled with genuine celebration. Vincent toasted to partnership and loyalty, his voice thick with emotion. Elena toasted to new beginnings and letting go of the past. Dmitry Volkov toasted to profitable alliances and family, both business and blood. And when it was Isabella's turn, she stood with Adrian's arm around her waist, their child growing between them, and raised her glass. To second chances, she said. To choosing love over fear. To building something real from broken pieces. To partnership. Her eyes met Adrian's. To us. To us, the room echoed. The party continued late into the night, but eventually people started leaving. Vincent and Elena departed together, still arguing good-naturedly about security protocols. Dmitry left with his men, but not before pulling Adrian aside for a quiet conversation that ended with a handshake and what looked like genuine respect. Finally, it was just Adrian and Isabella standing in their penthouse surrounded by flowers and the debris of celebration. Adrian's shoulder was probably aching from hours of standing, and Isabella's feet were killing her, but neither of them wanted to move from this moment. We did it, Isabella said. We actually pulled this off. Rebuilding a marriage, surviving a gang war, and throwing a party all in the same month? Adrian pulled her close. We're overachievers. What happens now? Now we live. We run businesses and raise our baby and figure out how to be married for real. We make mistakes and fix them. We fight and make up. We build something that lasts. Isabella looked around the penthouse, the space that had been her prison and was now her home. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad I stayed. Glad I didn't run when I had the chance. I'm glad you stayed too. Though if you'd run, I probably would have chased you. Probably? Definitely. I was gone for you even then, just too stupid to admit it. Adrian's hand found her stomach, feeling the small bump that was their future. How's the baby? Active. I think all the excitement today got them worked up. Smart kid, taking after their mother already. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, feeling their child move between them. The city lights sparkled beyond the windows, and somewhere out there, Adrian's organization ran its business. The Volkovs did the same, and the criminal underworld kept spinning in its endless cycles of power and violence. But up here, 26 floors above it all, was something different, something quieter, something that felt almost like peace. 6 months later, Isabella Vale gave birth to a daughter at 3 a.m, after 18 hours of labor that Adrian swore took years off his life. He'd stayed beside her the entire time, letting her crush his hand during contractions, whispering encouragement even when she cursed him for getting her pregnant in the first place. Their daughter came into the world screaming, all righteous fury and demanding presence, and Adrian cried when the nurse placed her in his arms. Isabella had never seen him cry before, not even during their vow renewal, but he wept openly, looking at their daughter like she was a miracle instead of just biology. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "What should we name her?" Isabella asked, exhausted and exhilarated. They'd discussed names for months without deciding. Adrian wanted something strong. Isabella wanted something beautiful. They'd compiled lists and argued playfully and never quite agreed. But looking at their daughter now, there was only one name that fit. "Sophia," Adrian said. "It means wisdom. She'll need it, growing up in our world." "Sophia Vale," Isabella tested it out. "I like it. Sophia Rose Vale." "After the flowers at our vow renewal?" "After new beginnings." Sophia Rose Vale grew up in the penthouse, surrounded by love and protection and a family that looked nothing like traditional families. Uncle Vincent taught her chess when she was 4 and let her win until she was 6, when she started beating him fair and square. Aunt Elena brought her books from around the world and taught her to see patterns in everything. Marcus became her shadow, protection, and friend rolled into one, teaching her self-defense as soon as she could walk because in their world, everyone needed to know how to fight. Dmitry Volkov sent gifts on her birthdays, expensive dolls that Sophia ignored in favor of building blocks and toy trucks. He attended her birthday parties with his own grandchildren, the next generation of both families growing up together instead of as enemies. Sophia learned young that her father's work was different from other fathers, that the men in suits who came to the penthouse at odd hours weren't selling insurance, that some questions weren't safe to ask in public. But she also learned that her father loved her mother with an intensity that made other parents' relationships look pale, that her mother ran businesses and made decisions and was respected as much as feared, that family meant more than blood. The years passed in a blur of normalcy wrapped in extraordinary circumstances. Adrian kept his promise. He stayed involved in operations but stepped back from daily management, making time for school plays and family dinners, and teaching Sophia how to ride a bike in Central Park with a full security detail, trying to look casual 50 yards behind them. Isabella built the legitimate businesses into an empire that rivaled the illegal ones in profit, proving that clean money could be just as lucrative as dirty. She and Adrian became a partnership in every sense, balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses, arguing and compromising, and building something that worked because they both wanted it to. They had a son 3 years after Sophia, Michael, named after Adrian's father, carrying the legacy but hopefully not the violence. Then another daughter, Caroline, who arrived early and loud and demanded attention from day one. The penthouse that had once been silent and sterile became chaos and warmth, toys scattered across marble floors, children's laughter echoing through rooms designed for elegant entertaining, crayon drawings magneted to the stainless steel refrigerator. A home, not just a house. 10 years after their vow renewal, Adrian and Isabella stood on the penthouse balcony while inside, their children fought over board games and Vincent refereed with the patience of a saint. The city sprawled below them, the same view Isabella had stared at a decade ago while planning her escape. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked, his arm around her waist. "Staying, choosing this life." Isabella leaned into him, thinking about the question seriously. The danger had never completely gone away. There were still threats, still enemies, still nights when Adrian came home looking haunted by decisions he'd had to make. But there was also love, partnership, children who knew they were cherished, a marriage that had been earned instead of arranged. "Not once," she said honestly, "though I reserve the right to regret it when Sophia starts dating." Adrian groaned. "Don't even joke about that. She's 10. She's beautiful and smart and growing up fast. In a few years, boys are going to notice. In a few years, I'm going to invest in a very large fence and very intimidating guard dogs." Isabella laughed, the sound carrying over the city. Inside, she heard Sophia shriek with laughter, probably because she'd just won whatever game they were playing. Michael's voice protested the rules while Caroline's higher pitch demanded her turn. This was her life. Chaotic and dangerous and beautiful, and completely unlike anything she'd imagined for herself a decade ago. She'd thought freedom meant escaping the penthouse, starting over somewhere safe and boring and alone. But real freedom, she'd learned, wasn't about running away. It was about choosing who to run toward, about building something worth protecting, about taking broken pieces and making them whole. "I love you," she said to Adrian, the words coming easier now after years of practice. "Thank you for being stubborn enough to chase me, for being brave enough to change, for being you." "I love you too." Adrian kissed her softly, a promise renewed with every touch. "Thank you for staying, for fighting, for making me better than I thought I could be." They stood together as the sun set over the city, wrapped in each other while their children's voices filled the home behind them. The penthouse that had been a prison became a sanctuary. The marriage that started with control became a partnership. The man who'd only known how to protect learned how to love. And the woman who'd once packed a suitcase to escape chose to unpack it and stay, building a life that was dangerous and messy and perfectly, imperfectly theirs. In the end, Isabella Rowe hadn't escaped the gilded cage. She'd transformed it into something else entirely, a home, a family, a future worth fighting for. Not because she was trapped, but because she chose it. Every single day, she chose it, and that made all the difference. Years later, when Sophia was old enough to ask questions, old enough to understand the truth beneath the careful explanations, she would ask her mother why she stayed, why she chose this life, this danger, this complicated man. And Isabella would tell her daughter the truth, that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone worth fighting for, worth growing with, worth building something real beside. That the strongest cages were the ones we built for ourselves out of fear and isolation. And that freedom came not from escaping, but from choosing to let someone in. "Your father and I," Isabella would tell Sophia, "we built this family from nothing, from mistakes and second chances and stubborn refusal to give up on each other. It wasn't easy. It still isn't some days, but it's ours, and that's what makes it beautiful." Sophia would understand eventually, would make her own choices about love and danger and what mattered most, but she would do it knowing that her parents had chosen each other, fought for each other, and built something lasting from broken beginnings. And in the penthouse that had witnessed transformation from prison to home, the Vale family would continue. Not perfect, not safe, but real. And in the end, real was better than any fairy tale. The story of Isabella and Adrian Vale wasn't about a woman escaping danger or a man learning to love. It was about two broken people choosing to be whole together, about partnership earned through fire, about building a family that defied every rule about how families were supposed to work. It was about second chances and the courage to take them. And it was about understanding that sometimes the greatest freedom comes not from running away, but from choosing to stay and fight for something worth having. The gilded silence had been broken. In its place was something infinitely more valuable, the beautiful, chaotic noise of a family that chose each other, every day, despite everything. That was their ending, and their beginning, and it was enough.